Chapter 109. When the old lady returned home, the Jiao Pa and Grandpa Jiao were already home. Both of them were not in good spirits. After confirming that the baby boy at the bridge was not a little kid, the father and son went to look for a few more people. Then, they went to the hospital to comfort Yao Hong. They had just returned home. With empty stomachs, the father and son had not eaten breakfast. The Jiao Ma was busy in the kitchen. The old lady originally wanted to talk about Zheng Tan, but when she saw the Grandpa Jiao, she asked about the child first. When she found out, she could only sigh. She really did not know what to say at this time. Little Pomelo ran out the moment the old lady entered the house. Then, she kept staring at the door, but did not see the cat. But the adults were talking, and she could not interrupt. The Jiao Yuan took the remote control and changed a few channels. He was not in the mood to watch TV, so he lay on the sofa and prepared to sleep. When the Jiao Yuan was about to fall asleep, little Pomelo poked him. "Brother, black charcoal is not back." Jiao Yuan shuddered and all his sleepiness was gone. He looked around and really didn't see his black cat. "Grandma, where is black charcoal?" the Jiao Yuan asked. The old lady slapped her thigh. She had almost forgotten about the child when they talked about it. She quickly told them what happened outside. "Black charcoal ran away?" The Jiao Yuan jumped off the sofa in disbelief. "Black charcoal would not run away," little Pomelo said. The Jiao Pa stopped the two children as they were about to go out. He asked the old lady, "Who do you think black charcoal was looking at?" The old lady thought for a while with a guilty expression. "Someone who went to the convenience store to buy something." The Jiao Pa asked a few more questions. The old lady thought for a while and answered them one by one. The Jiao Pa went back to his room and called someone. When he came out, he asked the Jiao Yuan and little Pomelo to stay at home. "What happened?" Grandpa Jiao stopped the Jiao Pa. The old man was very curious. If the Jiao Pa did not finish the story, he would feel uncomfortable. "I've asked around." After the middle-aged woman who carried Mao Mao away left the amusement park, she walked past the parking lot. "My car was parked there, so she should have passed by my car." According to the surrounding witnesses, the place where the motorbike picked up the person was also nearby. At that time, black charcoal was in the car. It must have seen something. Otherwise, it wouldn't have run around. The person who went to the convenience store to buy things is very suspicious. I'll go to the convenience store and ask about the situation first. The Mao Mao that the Jiao Pa mentioned was the child's nickname. Being able to get some useful information, the Jiao Pa was reinvigorated. He picked up his phone and went out. No matter how the Jiao Pa and the police investigation went, Zheng Tan, who was in the little three-wheeled motorcycle, felt that he had been too impulsive. He had not been fully sure yet, but he had already jumped in. There was no turning back now. He did not know where the car would go. When the car reached the suburbs, there were some houses. However, these houses did not look shabby. They were all 2 or 3 stories high. The little three-wheeled motorcycle drove along a dirt road and stopped in front of a house. After the three-wheeled motorcycle stopped, the driver did not look at the seats inside. He took out his keys and opened the door. Zheng Tan looked around through the gap in the curtains. When he saw that there was no one around, he lifted the curtains and jumped out. He hid behind a tree. There were a lot of weeds around here. It was very suitable for hiding. Zheng Tan looked at the 2-story building with white tiles in front of him. It was similar to the houses around it. There was nothing special about it. However, the windows and doors were tightly shut. The windows on the second floor were one-way glass. It was impossible to see what was inside from the outside. Zheng Tan hid in the grass behind the tree for a while. In the end, he found a tree and jumped up. He lay on a branch and looked at the building through the gaps in the leaves. The surroundings were very quiet. There were not many residents in the area. Occasionally, he saw a few people loitering outside. While Zheng Tan was observing the small building, she learned from the conversations of the passers-by that this area was going to undergo urban development. Those who had land had received quite a sum of compensation and were preparing to move away. Some spent their days looking for a place to live, while others decided to move to other places. This was why there were not many people around. Just as Zheng Tan was about to fall asleep, the window on the second floor of the building was pulled open. A middle-aged woman was splashing water outside. It was that person. Zheng Tan was shocked. He felt that this trip was worth it. After the middle-aged woman finished splashing water, she closed the window again. Zheng Tan walked around the two-story building. It was really difficult to find a way in. This building did not have a backyard. He could not climb over the wall. The windows on the first floor were also tightly shut. The only two windows that were open were installed with anti-theft nets. Zheng Tan could not squeeze in at all. Thus, he could only enter from the second floor. It would be better if he had a phone. He could directly send an anonymous message to the Jiaopa. Unfortunately, he could not find a phone nearby. If he called Zheng Tan, he could not speak. He could not tell others the address. It was better to do it himself. At least, he had to make sure that the little brat was still here. When Zheng Tan walked around the two-story building, he did not hear the cries of the child. He could not even hear people talking. He originally wanted to wait until nighttime. However, Zheng Tan heard from the Jiaopa and the others that the longer he waited, the more dangerous it would be. It was better to act early. He visually estimated the height of the second floor. The front of the building was covered with white tiles. The sides and the back of the building were not covered with tiles. The walls were rough and uneven. If he really wanted to climb, he could do it. The windows on the side of the second floor were tightly shut. There was an open window at the back. It was just an ordinary window. When there was no one around, Zheng Tan tested the wall. After making sure that his claws could use the rough surface of the wall to climb up, he began to move. Zheng Tan felt that he was now like Spider-Man, walking along the wall. However, if the wall was smooth, it would be more difficult. When he came to the open window at the back, Zheng Tan listened to the movements inside. After making sure that there was no one around the window, he climbed in through the small window. It looked like a utility room. There were a few cardboard boxes. It seemed that no one had cleaned it for a while. There was a layer of dust on the cardboard boxes. The door was closed, but the good thing was that the door lock seemed to be broken. It was only closed, and Zheng Tan could open it slightly with her claws. Carefully squeezing out through the crack in the door, Zheng Tan listened. He did not hear anyone around. He went to the room in front. It was not big. There was only one bed. There were a few pieces of clothes that belonged to a middle-aged woman on the bed. There were no baby products. Strange. Where was she? The three-wheeled motorcycle driver had come in. The middle-aged woman must be here too. However, why was there no movement? After looking around, there was a room on the second floor that was tightly shut. Zheng Tan put his ear to the door and vaguely heard a sound. There was soundproofing inside. Feeling the vibration approaching, Zheng Tan quickly rushed under the bed in the room in front. The next moment, the tightly shut door opened. Zheng Tan heard a conversation inside. There was a woman's voice and two men's voices. The woman was definitely the middle-aged woman. One of the men was the three-wheeled motorcycle driver, and the others sounded slightly older. Zheng Tan listened to them talk about big goods, little goods, and so on. They also talked about treating illnesses. The middle-aged woman was complaining about something, and the three of them were arguing. After listening for a long time, Zheng Tan realized that the so-called big goods were actually boys and little goods were girls. This should be a jargon. However, when he heard people being compared to goods, Zheng Tan felt very uncomfortable. Was human life so cheap? They originally had 3 children, 2 boys and 1 girl. However, one of the boys was sick when they were shipped here. They did not want to treat the boy's illness. Other than the problem of money, they did not want to be too troublesome and expose themselves. Therefore, they just threw the boy on the bridge. Zheng Tan guessed that it was probably the baby that Jiao Pa and Grandpa Jiao rushed over to see at 4 o'clock in the morning. There was also a girl who seemed to have been fed an overdose of sleeping pills. She was a little slow and probably stupid. Zheng Tan thought of those people who used tranquilizer guns to shoot dogs. They did not care about the dose that different dogs could withstand. They just shot them directly and many dogs would die immediately. As for humans, there was also a great risk, especially for children. The slightest carelessness was related to life. Even if the child was lucky, the child's brain development and intelligence would be seriously damaged. Not to mention such a small baby. The 3 of them were arguing about these 2 things. The man with the old voice said that he had already contacted someone to pick up the goods. However, there were two problems in a row. It was the other two people's carelessness. It was their fault and they lost 40,000 yuan. Zheng Tan did not know how they contacted the buyer. The price for a boy was 30,000 yuan, and the price for a girl was 10,000 yuan. The person said that this was a rare high price, but it was ruined. Now there was only a boy left. Otherwise, they could have earned another 40,000 yuan. $40,000 for 2 lives, and they were children who couldn't even speak. Zheng Tan felt that these people were king inhumane. However, at the same time, Zheng Tan was also glad. The remaining boy was probably the Mao little brat that the Jiao Pa and the others were anxiously looking for. The old man's very good-looking baby boy that was just brought over yesterday could indeed match Mao. Since he had found the place and the person, how could he contact the Jiao Pa and the others? Zheng Tan was troubled. The door of the room was tightly shut. The middle-aged woman and the 3-wheeled motorcycle driver came out. The old man was still inside. He did not know what he was doing. Perhaps he was contacting the buyer or negotiating the price. The 3-wheeled motorcycle driver smoked a cigarette and went downstairs. The middle-aged woman came into the room, opened the drawer, and took out a box. Zheng Tan heard the sound and guessed that it was jewelry. After a while, when the middle-aged woman left and went downstairs, Zheng Tan listened to the movements around him. He came out from under the bed and looked at the layout of the room again. It would be difficult for him to deal with 3 people alone. Moreover, these 3 people were obviously not good people. He could not be impulsive. After rummaging through the drawer and the small bag hanging at the side, Zheng Tan found a box of medicine. Zheng Tan shook his beard and narrowed his eyes. Diet medicine? Looking at the teapot on the side, Zheng Tan took out the medicine. Chapter 110. Zheng Tan had to thank little Wimp's mother. Otherwise, he wouldn't have known the effects of this medicine. When the Jiao Pa and Jiao Ma were talking, Zheng Tan heard them clearly. Moreover, they were talking about this brand of weight loss medicine. The medicine was a capsule. Zheng Tan casually found a piece of paper and hid under the bed to open the medicine. It was impossible to throw the whole capsule into the teapot, so Zheng Tan had to get the powder out of the capsule. Cat claws weren't easy to do, but after all, he had used them many times, so they were much more flexible. It was just opening the capsule, so it wasn't too troublesome. After getting the white powder out of the capsule, Zheng Tan poured the powder into the teapot and put some into the teacups on the table. He didn't know what tea leaves were in the teacups, and Zheng Tan didn't know what they were. He hoped that it wouldn't affect the medicine's effects. After doing all this, Zheng Tan heard some movement from the stairs, so he quickly hid under the bed. He didn't know if the side effects that the Jiao Pa mentioned would happen, but Zheng Tan could only try. The person who came in was still the same auntie. Zheng Tan was puzzled. This auntie was a woman in her 40s. From what he remembered, she wasn't very fat, yet she was still taking weight loss medicine. Moreover, when Zheng Tan was rummaging through the drawers, he saw a jewelry box with many gold necklaces and gold earrings. No one would criticize you for being vain, but these gold and silver jewelry were all bought with the money from selling the children, right? It was said that women were emotional creatures, so no matter what, they should have some maternal instincts when facing children, right? What was this auntie thinking when she stole the children? Little Wimp and the other 2 poor children were probably just a part of the many children she sold. Who knew how many years they had been in this business, but they seemed to be quite skilled. Zheng Tan felt that he was already a scumbag when he was a human. He didn't expect that after turning into a cat, he would still be able to see people who were so shameless. Just as Zheng Tan was thinking, the auntie came to the bedside and sat down. She picked up the cup of tea leaves and drank 2 mouthfuls. She frowned. She felt that the taste was not right, and the tea was already a little cold. She opened the window, poured out the tea in the cup, and picked up the teapot to pour another cup. After taking 2 sips, she still felt that the taste was different from before. However, the little 3-wheeled motorcycle driver downstairs was urging her to make lunch, so she didn't think too much about it. She finished the tea in the cup and hurried downstairs. Zheng Tan couldn't see the woman's movements, but he could roughly guess what she was doing from her voice. Hearing the sound of the auntie drinking water, Zheng Tan was relieved. However, he wasn't sure whether it was effective or not. How much did the auntie drink? How much did she drink? Could she produce the effect that the Jiaopa mentioned? Zheng Tan didn't know. However, as long as he could weaken their power, it would be fine. Otherwise, Zheng Tan could only find an opportunity to destroy them one by one. After a while, the smell of food came from downstairs. Zheng Tan was a little hungry, but at this time, he could only endure it. This was his own fault, so even if it was uncomfortable, he had to endure it. Squatting under the bed, Zheng Tan thought about his next plan. In fact, he didn't have a specific plan. He could only take one step at a time. He didn't know these people, and he couldn't expose himself. What should he do? Those people were eating lunch, but the old man didn't come out of the room. It was the auntie who brought the food in. Zheng Tan suspected that the old man couldn't move. If that was the case, it would be more advantageous for Zheng Tan. Sigh, it was noon. He didn't know what the Jiaopa was doing. What would they do when they found out that he was missing? Zheng Tan still remembered the old lady's exasperated screams when he ran to the three-wheeled motorcycle. He didn't know if he would be scolded when he went back. After lunch, the three of them discussed something in the room. After the auntie came out, she went back to her room to sleep. Zheng Tan listened to the conversation between her and the three-wheeled motorcycle driver. It seemed that they were going to take action at night. Were they going to move the children tonight? Were they going to ship them to a foreign buyer? Time was running out, and Zheng Tan felt that he had to do something. After a while, the three-wheeled motorcycle driver came over. He was going to buy the bus ticket. He came over to greet the auntie and ask if there was anything else he wanted to buy. However, after he called out a few times at the door, the auntie didn't respond. Zheng Tan's ears twitched, and he listened to the abnormal breathing of the person on the bed. Was the medicine working? After the three-wheeled motorcycle driver called out a few more times, he opened the door impatiently. However, he found that the person on the bed didn't look right. Her limbs were spasming, and she looked like she was having difficulty breathing. Hey, what's wrong with you? What's going on? The three-wheeled motorcycle driver walked to the bedside and asked a few more questions. There was still no response. The person on the bed had a very high body temperature. Coupled with the symptoms, the three-wheeled motorcycle driver was scared. He quickly ran to the closed door and knocked on it. Uncle Hook, open the door. Something's wrong. When the old man opened the door, his voice was filled with anxiety. What's wrong? What's wrong? The three-wheeled motorcycle driver pointed at the person on the bed. She seems to be sick. Uncle, is it epilepsy? After listening to the three-wheeled motorcycle driver, the old man calmed down a lot. As long as no one came to investigate, it wasn't a big deal. Bad luck. Something went wrong at the crucial moment. The old man scolded. Uncle Hook, do you have any medicine? We can't let her stay like this forever. The plan for tonight's operation has already been arranged. We can't do it without her. I'm a grown man, and I can't bring a child so far away. I'm guessing that the moment we leave the station, we will be targeted by the police. You also said that we can't give the child sleeping pills anymore. That won't sell for a good price. Only she has the means to coax the child. I really can't take care of the child. The three-wheeled motorcycle driver said anxiously. The old man spat and scolded a few more times. After that, he asked the three-wheeled motorcycle driver to bring the person to a small clinic not too far from here. That clinic is closed. The boss is preparing to buy a house in the city. When I came back today, the door was closed and no one was there. The three-wheeled motorcycle driver said. Then see which hospital is closest to here. Send her there. Try to avoid people as much as possible. AI, of course I know. She put on makeup today. This place is also far from the amusement park. If we go out, no one will recognize her. Zheng Tan watched them busy for a while. The three-wheeled motorcycle driver took the auntie away. Hearing the sound of the three-wheeled motorcycle driving away, Zheng Tan let out a long sigh of relief. If it was only the old man, it would be much easier. But that old man has been hiding in the room all this time. How could he lure him out? Zheng Tan ran downstairs. The layout downstairs was much simpler. The motorcycle that the three-wheeled motorcycle driver used to ride was there. The bedroom downstairs should be where the three-wheeled motorcycle driver slept. It was a little messy and there was nothing special about it. The windows downstairs were installed with anti-theft nets. Zheng Tan gave up on the plan of jumping out of the window. After thinking for a while, he opened the door. Even if someone came in to steal something, Zheng Tan was not afraid. After all, it was not his house. These people deserved to be robbed. It was good that someone came in. The sooner they found out the old man's secret. After looking around, Zheng Tan went upstairs again. Zheng Tan looked around and then went to the auntie's room. He held the teacup and threw it at the window. But there was a hole in the window. The teacup was also thrown out. These three people were so strict with outsiders. That meant that many people around them did not know that they were selling children. Zheng Tan felt that since he could not do it himself, he should get help from others. Zheng Tan continued to look for things to throw out of the window. Anyway, it was not his house. He did not feel bad about it. Table flipped. All the drawers were pulled out and thrown on the floor. Things were thrown everywhere. There was also a box of jewelry that the auntie had hidden. It was also thrown on the floor. Gold chains, gold earrings, etc. were all thrown on the floor. The sound of the window being smashed attracted many people who lived around. Someone saw that the door of the house was open and called out twice at the door. No one answered, but no one came in. Recently, many families had quarreled over the distribution of land compensation. There were also people who were injured because of this. The people around thought that it was probably because of this, so no one wanted to get involved. Besides, they were not familiar with this family. They just stood at the door and watched, talking among themselves. The old man inside actually heard the noise outside. He opened the thick curtains a little and looked outside. After hesitating for a while, he still did not open the door. He called the other two people, but they did not pick up. The old man had a bad feeling. He walked around the 10-square-meter room twice, lit a cigarette, and sat there smoking. There was a knife with a blood groove beside his hand. If it was just a thief, the old man was not afraid. It was fine as long as it was not the police. If the things outside were stolen, then so be it. As for the losses, he could earn it back by doing a few transactions. After sitting for a while, he still felt nervous. The old man picked up a white plastic wine bottle beside him, unscrewed the lid, poured a cup of wine, and drank 2 mouthfuls. The wine could embolden the old man, and the ruthlessness in his eyes became stronger. Although his leg was a little injured, it did not affect his decisiveness. The narrow room was filled with smoke, and the little boy on the crib moved his eyelids. It was probably because the sleeping pills had worn off, and he looked like he was about to wake up. Zheng Tan saw that the old man was still holed up inside, and the people outside did not come in. He could not help but feel a little angry. He glanced at the messy things on the floor, and then looked at the closed door. Since the old man did not come out, then he would directly use force. He could not wait for the little 3-wheel driver to come back. If that happened, then all his efforts would be wasted. He heard the noise outside and did not open the door. Then the old man would not open the door even if he went to knock. Zheng Tan observed the door of the auntie's room and the closed door of the room. They looked about the same. If it was only this kind of door, he could still kick it open. He could not hesitate anymore. Zheng Tan came to the door, took a few steps back, took a deep breath, sped up, jumped up, and used all his strength to kick the door lock. Originally, Zheng Tan planned to kick the door open within 3 times. He did not expect that this time, the door would be directly kicked open. The old man inside had just drunk wine and was about to come out with the knife to take a look. Just as he approached the door suddenly opened with a bang, directly hitting his head. Chapter 111. Zheng Tan, who was about to kick the old man a few more times, saw the fire spreading and didn't care about him anymore. He kicked the knife in the old man's hand to one side, then ran to the crib and looked at the little brat inside. The little brat had already woken up and looked like he was about to cry. However, after seeing Zheng Tan, his face that was about to cry calmed down, and he even started to laugh. What the hell was he laughing at? Zheng Tan couldn't care about anything else. The fire was getting stronger, and the heat in the air was getting stronger. If he continued to stay here, it would be difficult for him to breathe, and it would be very harmful to the little brat. Zheng Tan hurriedly lifted the little brat up, then started to run with his 2 legs. Stepping over the old man blocking the door, Zheng Tan carried the little brat and ran downstairs. The old man who had fallen to the ground covered his head and was about to get up when he suddenly felt a black figure jump over him. Because his head had been hit, and when he fell to the ground, the back of his head hit the stool on the ground. He was a little dizzy and couldn't see things clearly. The old man couldn't see anything from the black figure, but the one above the black figure was very familiar. Right? It was the big one. Someone had snatched the big one away. The old man's mind wasn't very clear, and his vision was blurry. His sense of distance wasn't very strong, and as long as he was a little more clear-headed, he wouldn't be able to connect that little black figure to a person. The fire around him was getting stronger and stronger, and the old man slowly realized that he couldn't stay here for long. Holding onto the door frame, he stood up, but after a few breaths, he felt that his mind was getting more and more muddled. This was a narrow little room, and the doors and windows were similar to other rooms. The only special thing was that the windows were covered with thick curtains, and the walls and door were covered with sound-absorbing cotton. This was to prevent the conversation inside from leaking out, or the cries of the baby from leaking out. Perhaps some could be heard outside the door, but outside the building it was fine as long as the people outside couldn't hear. The requirements weren't high, so they kept the original wooden door. This was also the reason why Zheng Tan was able to succeed with a kick. Of course, there was also a coincidence that even Zheng Tan didn't expect. No matter what, Zheng Tan wanted to quickly carry little Wimp out and settle the matter. But when he reached the staircase on the first floor, Zheng Tan stopped in his tracks. He had almost forgotten that there were still some onlookers standing outside the entrance of this small building. He couldn't just carry the little brat out like this. Zheng Tan placed little Wimp on the ground floor of the first floor. Seeing that little Wimp was still looking at him, he laughed so hard that saliva was coming out of his mouth. Zheng Tan raised his hand and poked him. He hoped to poke this little brat until he cried. As long as he cried, the people outside would come in, right? Unfortunately, the little brat laughed even more happily. Zheng Tan, left with no choice, Zheng Tan walked behind little Wimp and pushed him outside. Little Wimp thought that Zheng Tan was playing with him, so he was pushed forward while lying on the ground. He didn't even know that his sleeves were dirty. "Hey, is there a child inside?" a resident said as he looked inside. "Looks like it. It looks like he's crawling out." The first floor was a little dark. Looking from the light to the dark, many details couldn't be seen clearly. However, Zheng Tan could clearly see the reactions of the people outside. Little Wimp was originally playing happily when he suddenly realized that the pushing force was gone. When he looked back, there was nothing. When he looked forward, there was a bunch of strangers. Wah! Finally seeing little Wimp cry, Zheng Tan heaved a sigh of relief. There were already people coming in from outside. After standing at the staircase on the second floor and watching little Wimp being carried away, Zheng Tan also jumped out of the utility room that he came in from. It was easier to climb up, but more difficult to climb down. Fortunately, there wasn't anyone behind this small building. Zheng Tan slowly slid down from the window on the second floor and jumped to the ground. When he walked to the front of the small building, many people had already seen the burning curtains on the second floor and smelled the burnt smell. Some called the police, some rushed to the rescue. Zheng Tan saw that the old man was dragged out. He seemed to still be alive, but he had fainted. Just as he was looking, a police car drove over. They just called the police. Why are they here so quickly? Some of the residents were curious. Zheng Tan looked behind the police cars. The Jiaopa's car was also there. He immediately felt relieved. This way, little Wimp didn't need to look for the police. He could directly be taken away by the Jiaopa. After putting out the fire, the Jiaopa had already found little Wimp, who was being hugged by the residents and crying at the top of his lungs. Little Wimp's father also drove over and hugged him. The father and son cried together. The Jiaopa called the other relatives and elders to let them know that they were safe. Then, he looked at a spot on little Wimp's back that looked like a cat's paw print. He walked to the side, looked at the surrounding bushes, and shouted in a low voice, "Black charcoal? Come out quickly. I know you're around." Hearing the Jiaopa's shout, Zheng Tan poked his head out from behind a tree. Seeing the black cat's head, the Jiaopa, who was about to smile and call his cat over, had a strange expression on his face. Little Wimp's father saw the old man being dragged out by the residents and was a little agitated. If it weren't for the few police officers holding him back, he probably would have gone over and kicked him. Many of the residents were watching the development of the situation and didn't pay attention to the Jiaopa. A leading police officer walked over and chatted with the Jiaopa for a while. It's confirmed that it's him. We also found a few phones upstairs. Due to the fire, they were damaged to varying degrees. However, all the information we need is on them. We will investigate further based on the call records and numbers. However, these people don't usually use their real names. Once they feel that something is wrong, they will change their phone number and even their code name. We can't say how much we can find for now. Okay, thank you for your hard work. The Jiaopa paused and asked again, did you find out the cause of the fire? There's a speculation. The old man likes to drink high alcohol content liquor. I don't know where he got it from, but there might be some industrial alcohol in it. The old man likes to smoke, and the weather has been good lately. Otherwise, it wouldn't have caught fire so easily. You haven't seen the house before. There are a lot of flammable things in there, and some low-quality sound-absorbent cotton. Not only did it catch fire, it also produced a lot of poisonous gas. The old man inhaled a lot of it. However, the old man was lucky. A few days ago, a nightclub also caught fire due to some unknown reasons. Some of the things in there burned and produced hydrogen cyanide. If it had happened here today, the old man would have died. Hydrogen cyanide was a deadly poison. The Jiaopa was very clear about this. How's the old man now? The Jiaopa asked. Knowing that it wasn't his cat that started the fire, the Jiaopa felt a lot more at ease. He was dragged out in time. He survived, but he won't be able to live for long. With all the crimes he committed, the law won't let him live. It was October and the weather was good. Many people were still wearing short sleeves and busily working. The policeman who talked to the Jiaopa had sweat all over his forehead. At this time, a policeman came to look for him. He said a few words to the Jiaopa and left. Zheng Tan listened to the conversation between the policeman and the Jiaopa from the bushes. He knew that they had been investigating the three-wheeled motorcycle driver. When they were at the hospital, they had arrested him and the woman. At the same time, they had also found a silly baby girl in the three-wheeled motorcycle driver's car. The three-wheeled motorcycle driver was going to find a place to throw the baby away. The Jiaopa stopped paying attention. They were either investigating the human traffickers or focusing on the child. Black Charcoal, go back to the car and stay there for a while, the Jiaopa said as he walked towards the parking lot. As he walked, he glanced at his cat, and the corner of his eyes twitched. Opening the car door, the Jiaopa asked Zheng Tan to get into the car. It would probably be a while before they left. There were some snacks in the car for Zheng Tan to eat. Zheng Tan didn't care about anything else. After getting into the car, he grabbed the snacks and opened them to eat. There were still some stains on his feet, and he stepped on the car seat. The Jiaopa didn't say anything when he saw this. He lifted Zheng Tan up and checked. The Jiaopa didn't find any injuries on his cat. He was walking and running normally, and his appetite was still very good. Black Charcoal, thank you for your hard work. The Jiaopa said in the end. He really had to thank his cat for this. Otherwise, they wouldn't be investigating the three-wheeled motorcycle. The Jiaopa glanced at his cat again, sighed, closed the car door, and walked towards the house. Zheng Tan didn't care about what happened there. Moreover, he felt that since the Jiaopa was able to detect some of the things he did, he would definitely help cover up some of the traces. The Jiaopa would make up some nonsense that didn't make sense. Anyway, he wasn't worried. He had saved the child, so he just needed to fill his stomach first. After eating and drinking, Zheng Tan didn't do anything else. He leaned against the car window and looked at the crowd outside. There were more and more residents gathering around. There was no lack of people in the world who wanted to see what was going on. Yawning, Zheng Tan leaned against the back seat and closed his eyes to rest. He hadn't slept much since last night. Now that he was relaxed, he felt a little tired. After some time, Zheng Tan heard the car door open. He opened his eyes and saw the Jiaopa coming in. He looked out the window again. Other than the two police cars that were still parked there, the other cars were preparing to leave. The Jiaopa and the child's father didn't go back first. They went to the hospital first, where the child's mother was. I'll go to the hospital first. Do you still want to stay in the car? The Jiaopa asked after parking the car. Zheng Tan's ears twitched, and the tip of his tail wagged twice. He didn't have any intention of getting up. Okay. After closing the car door, the Jiaopa and the others walked towards the hospital. Knowing that their child was fine, the adults and the elderly were so happy that they cried. That had nothing to do with Zheng Tan. He just wanted to go back and take a good shower and catch up on sleep. When they entered the hospital, there were a few people together. When they came out, it was only the Jiaopa. The people in the hospital were too enthusiastic. The child's father even pulled the Jiaopa to thank him properly. The Jiaopa said that he had something to do and left first. When he returned to his house, the Jiaoma was waiting at the door. The two children rushed out as soon as they heard the noise. They were told that their cat was fine over the phone, so they waited in the living room. They didn't even want to watch the TV. Black charcoal. The Jiao Yuan and little Pomelo both ran out. However, when Zheng Tan came out of the car, the Jiao Ma and the two children's expressions were a little strange. Previously, Zheng Tan felt that there was something wrong with the Jiao Pa's expression, but he didn't think too much about it. He just thought that what happened to him this time was a little strange. But now, even if he couldn't figure it out, Zheng Tan knew that something was wrong. Little Pomelo pointed at Zheng Tan and said in surprise, "Black charcoal, your beard." Beard? Previously, when they were in the small building, Zheng Tan had focused all her attention on how to bring the little wimp out of the burning room and how to make sure that the little wimp was discovered without implicating herself, so she did not pay attention to anything else. Zheng Tan, who was walking towards the house, turned around and jumped into the car. He climbed into the driver's seat and stretched his neck to look at himself in the rearview mirror. Then, the alpaca in his heart started running again. Chapter 112. Zheng Tan stared at the rearview mirror for half a minute, and even looked at it from different angles. In the end, he realized that not a single strand of his beard was intact. The originally black, straight, and resilient strands of beard were now King curly. Cats not only had beards on both sides of their mouths, but they also had beards on other parts of their bodies, such as above their eyes, cheeks, and chins. However, people didn't call them beards, and they were easy to overlook. Sometimes, some people called the beards above their eyes eyebrows. Now, Zheng Tan's fur was almost all burned off in the places with long beards, but the beards on both sides of his mouth were more obvious. The eyebrows were curled, and the beards were curled, and they were curled unevenly. Zheng Tan wanted to smash the rearview mirror. However, considering that this was a new car that the Jiaopa had just bought a few days ago, Zheng Tan endured it. Jumping out of the car, Zheng Tan covered his ears, ignored the others, and walked straight into the house. "Did Black Charcoal get hurt?" asked the Jiaoma. "I think so." The Jiaopa nodded. The Jiaoma decided to comfort her cat and make more delicious food for dinner. Little Pomelo was very anxious when she knew that her cat's beard was burned off. She was relieved when the Jiaopa explained that it would grow back after a while. However, even though he knew that his beard would grow back in the future, Zheng Tan was still in a bad mood. After entering the house, he stayed in the room. Every once in a while, he would jump on the table and look at himself in the mirror. He was in a bad mood when he saw the curled beard. In the end, Zheng Tan made a decision. After looking through a few rooms, he saw a pair of scissors on the old lady's bedside table. Zheng Tan took the scissors and put it in front of little Pomelo, who had been following behind him. "Cut the beard." Little Pomelo looked at the scissors on the floor and was a little worried. Zheng Tan pushed the scissors closer to little Pomelo, meaning, "Cut it." Instead of cutting off Zheng Tan's beard, little Pomelo first asked the Jiaopa for confirmation. Then, she picked up the scissors and carefully cut off the curly cat's whiskers one by one. The parts that were not burned by the fire were still preserved and had not been cut off. Because the beard was not very regular when it was burned, the length of the curls was also different, so after cutting it, it was obviously long and short, looking very awkward. The roots of a cat's whiskers were covered with nerves, which allowed them to detect slight movements. It was said that they could even feel something as light as a milligram brushing past them. They could even distinguish the airflow and direction of the wind. Because of the importance of whiskers to cats, Little Pomelo was very serious. The Jiao Yuan watched from the side and did not even dare to breathe loudly. He was afraid that if he made any noise, he would disturb little Pomelo and cut off the cat's whiskers. The Jiao Pa, who was sitting on the sofa, actually wanted to say that as long as the roots of the whiskers were not damaged, it did not matter how much was cut off or how little was cut. However, seeing the two children's nervous faces and the obviously depressed cat, the Jiao Pa did not say anything. After cutting the whiskers, little Pomelo and the Jiao Yuan, who was watching from the side, both let out a sigh of relief. Little Pomelo put the curly cat's whiskers in a small plastic bag and put it in a box to keep it. Zheng Tan raised his paw and touched the whiskers. They were obviously much shorter. The shortest whiskers were almost touching the cat's mouth. *CK, it was not easy to be a hero, but the price was the curly whiskers that were burned. Jumping on the table and looking at the mirror on the table, Zheng Tan tilted his face and looked at himself from a few different angles. He felt that without the whiskers, the cat's aura suddenly changed from mighty and domineering to wretched and funny. It was really frustrating. "Don't worry, the whiskers will grow back soon." Little Pomelo comforted him. Zheng Tan wagged his tail. It would definitely grow back, but how long would it take for it to become the same as before? No one could say for sure. It could be a week or two, or more than a month, or even longer. There was no absolute answer. Different cats seemed to have different whiskers growing at different speeds. This was the Jiao Pa's conclusion. The most depressing moment for Zheng Tan was when the Grandpa Jiao came back. Knowing that it was his son's black cat that they were able to find the little brat so quickly, the Grandpa Jiao bought a big fish when he passed by the market to reward the cat. However, when he got home, he found that the whiskers on both sides of the cat's face were short and uneven. The old man was curious and insisted on asking the Jiao Pa why. The Jiao Pa said that there was a fire at the human trafficker's place and that his cat was burned there. The old man was a little distressed when he heard that, but then he started to laugh. After a day of depression, he was finally able to relax. He laughed very loudly, which made the two children unhappy. It's nothing. Many people in our village have cats. There are many who have their whiskers burned by the stove in the winter. They'll grow back soon. It's okay, but this cat's movements will probably be affected." The old man sat on the sofa and reached out to touch Zheng Tan's whiskers. Zheng Tan turned his head and slapped the old man's hand away. "Oh, you're angry." The Grandpa Jiao was not angry when his hand was slapped away. After this incident, the old man felt that this cat was indeed very rare. Hearing his grandson say that his cat was in a bad mood because it had lost its whiskers, the Grandpa Jiao was a little suspicious, but he did not continue to tease it. The old man had never thought about how a cat could be in a bad mood, but after this incident, he knew that this cat was intelligent, so he did not say anything more. The old people believed in some sayings. In the early years in his hometown, people had to respect animals with intelligence, but the old man looked at the cat in front of him and could not bring himself to respect it. No matter how he looked at it, it was funny. He just wanted to tease it. Shaking his head, the old man put his hands behind his back and walked to the kitchen. He saw the old lady cooking fish and was even pointing at it. The old lady chased him out with a spatula. In the end, he went to the living room to watch TV with the children. The little boy's parents called to thank them and said that they wanted to treat the Jiao Pa and the others to a meal. They even wanted to bring the cat. This was the first time they had formally invited a cat to a meal, but the Jiao Pa rejected them. The little boy's mother was still lying in the hospital and probably could not be discharged for the time being. They were all relatives and friends, so there was no need to go through so much trouble. Grandpa Jiao also said that those who were sick should rest and those who were taking care of the child should take care of the child. He was afraid that this incident would traumatize the child. They had to check if there were any side effects of the sleeping pills. If they wanted to thank him, they would have plenty of opportunities to do so in the future. Since the Grandpa Jiao had said so, the little boy's parents did not insist. They only said that they would have a gathering during the new year, and they would definitely treat them well. In fact, many people only knew that Associate Professor Jiao's cat was responsible for finding the three-wheeled motorcycle driver. As for what happened in the building where the human traffickers were hiding, they did not think that the cat was responsible. They only thought that someone else was involved, which led to the series of events that followed. After all, no one would have thought that a cat could create such trouble for the human traffickers. Even the Jiaopa would not have thought that his cat could carry a child and run downstairs. Since the cat was not involved, there were many suspicious points in the case. The investigation was still ongoing. However, since the cause of the fire could not be found, and the old man was not very clear-headed, they could not get anything out of him. Now, their work temporarily shifted from the direction of the fire to the search for the 3 human traffickers. Human traffickers were involved in a wide range of transactions. For example, the 3 that were caught this time, there were people above them who were in contact with even more human traffickers who sold children. It could be in the city or the province, or it could be in other provinces. Therefore, according to the information at hand, the work in the future would be even more difficult. Now, some people were rubbing their hands and preparing to do big things in order to be promoted. They would not keep thinking about how the small building caught fire, or how the little boy climbed downstairs. Just 5 hours after the old man was caught, one of the provincial public security department's highway traffic police detachment drove a police car to a toll station. They found a suspicious woman carrying a baby. When they questioned her, the woman looked panicked and full of loopholes. After more questioning, the woman finally confessed that she had broken the law. And in these 2 cases, there were parts that were related. They had people in common. After the investigation, through the unified feedback of the investigation results, more than 200 people were involved in the investigation within half a year. More than 100 children were involved in the investigation. A nationwide arrest operation had begun. However, that was a story for later. Let's not talk about it for now. Zheng Tan would not pay special attention to the child trafficking cases. He was now squatting on the sofa in distress. Many people said that a beard was like a ruler or a snail's antennae. It could help a cat detect the width of the road so that it could move freely and accurately. Without a beard, their movements would become sluggish and lifeless. For Zheng Tan, it was not sluggish or lifeless. It was just that he was not used to it. Hearing it from others was one thing, but the one who felt it the most was Zheng Tan himself. Previously, when he was in a bad mood, Zheng Tan put all his thoughts on the burnt beard. But now, after calming down, he realized that it did feel like something was missing. It was not entirely a psychological effect, but a real feeling. Usually, he did not pay much attention to it, but when he slept at night, in the dead of the night, Zheng Tan always felt that his senses had become a little sluggish. As an extremely important tactile organ for cats, the function of the beard was also reflected. They were a supplement to the visual senses. After losing the beard, Zheng Tan truly understood the function of the long beard. The long beard above the eyes and on the cheeks could remind Zheng Tan of objects that were harmful to the eyes and other parts of the face. After touching them, he would avoid them, so that he would not bump into them without seeing them. Usually, he would sleep and eat as usual. His appetite was not bad. Zheng Tan would not let his stomach suffer because of losing the beard. However, he did feel uncomfortable and did not feel smooth. Sometimes, Zheng Tan would feel uneasy. He did not know if it was the aftereffects of losing the beard. Could it be that he was too sensitive? Zheng Tan lay on the sofa and pondered. However, before Zheng Tan could adjust his state of mind, the National Day holiday was almost over. Because of the incident with the little brat, everyone did not go back to their hometown. They only stayed in town for a few days, then prepared to return to Chuhua City. Before leaving, Grandpa Jiao even told the Jiaopa to bring the cats back for the new year. When the time came, he would make a beautiful cat bed for them. The Jiaopa only smiled and did not say much. They knew that their cats always slept on the bed. Knowing that they were going back to Chuhua, Zheng Tan's mood improved a little. Chapter 113. Zheng Tan didn't leave the house for the first week after returning to the eastern courtyard. After the National Day holiday, Jiao Wei and the others started their classes. At noon, Jiao Wei picked up little Pomelo for lunch at the small restaurant and brought a portion back for Zheng Tan. After the holiday, when Jiao Wei saw Zheng Tan, he didn't know what to say. If it was a normal cat, he might have smiled, but facing this black cat, he couldn't smile, and he didn't dare to smile. In the past, he didn't believe that a cat could be so capable, but now, Jiao Wei was shaken. In October, No one came to his small restaurant to ask for sanitary fees, and no one came looking for trouble. His father said that it might be because it wasn't time yet, but Jiao Wei didn't think that was the reason, especially after going to the night building. He opened the door and put the lunchbox on the chair. The black cat, lying on the sofa, yawned lazily, stretched, and began to eat his lunch. The cat's whiskers had grown a little after this week, better than when they were first cut, but Jing Tan still thought that it was growing too slowly. At this speed, it would take more than a week for it to be barely noticeable, and for it to be the same as before, it would take even longer. However, after this incident, Jing Tan felt that the whiskers were much more sensitive than before, and he didn't know if it was because of his deliberate training. After returning home, when Jing Tan was bored alone at home, he would flip through the magazines that Jiao Pa subscribed to. Once, he happened to see an article in a not-so-formal magazine, and the general idea was as follows. A scientist did this experiment. After they blindfolded a cat for a period of time, compared to a normal cat without blindfolds, the former's whiskers grew more, and the average length of the whiskers was 5 millimeters longer than a normal cat's. Therefore, some people jokingly said that in order to let a cat recover faster after its whiskers were cut, it could be blindfolded. Jing Tan didn't want to cover his eyes, but after careful consideration, he felt that he could give it a try. Sometimes, when he was at home, Jing Tan would close his eyes and use his beard's sense of touch to determine what was happening around him and the objects he came into contact with. The article also said that in the dark, a cat's whiskers have a very sensitive and rapid sense of touch. Cats can use it to identify invisible things. Jing Tan had tried it before. He didn't know if it was because he was too slow or because his beard hadn't grown properly, but it wasn't as effective as the article said. However, none of this made Jing Tan give up the idea of trying. As a cat with only half a beard, a cat that could only hide at home and entertain itself, this was the pleasure he had finally found after being bored out of his mind. Since there was no one at home most of the time during the day, Jing Tan could boldly give it a try. Even if he made a fool of himself, no one would see it. For example, in the afternoon, after the lunch break, Jiao Wei would send little Pomelo to school, and he would go to class himself, or go to the library to study. Jing Tan would jump off the sofa, close his eyes, and start to mobilize his senses to the greatest extent to feel the things around him and the sensations caused by some slight movements. The wind blew in from the balcony, and Jing Tan could roughly determine the obstacles in front of him from the surrounding airflow. In addition to the whiskers, Jing Tan also felt that there was something special about the front paws. Some vibrations on the ground could be felt through the fur on the front paws. Jing Tan didn't pay attention to it before, but now it seemed that the reason why cats were so alert and could react quickly to small movements was not only because of experience, but also because of some of their evolved abilities. Jing Tan now hoped to be able to make greater use of these unearthed abilities, so that when he went out in the future, they could come in handy. Since Jing Tan's beard was cut, the advertisements that he had with Xiaoguo also stopped. Xiaoguo called every few days to ask about the situation, and he was even more anxious than Jing Tan. But it was impossible to let a cat with a broken beard appear in an advertisement, right? That would make people laugh their heads off, and some people with ulterior motives might even connect the matter of the whiskers to cat food. There was no lack of people in the world who would seize the opportunity to put the blame on you. Therefore, even if he was anxious, Xiaoguo had to endure it. For this reason, Xiaoguo also looked for a lot of people to seek the secret to make cats grow whiskers faster. Jing Tan ignored him. Now that he had just figured out the whisker game, he didn't want to try other uncertain methods. If there was a chance that the whiskers would fall off, it would be useless. Every morning when he got up, the first thing Jing Tan did was to touch his whiskers and then look in the mirror. Little Pomelo also measured Jing Tan every day. Every whisker was recorded, and little Pomelo recorded it in a book. Looking at the increase in the number, everyone was very pleased. Knowing that a cat's whiskers would grow was one thing, but really seeing and confirming that it was growing was another thing. After confirming it, there was no need to worry. After playing the whisker game, Jing Tan went to the balcony, leaned against the pot of orchid, and squinted his eyes to bask in the sun. Clang, clang, clang. The sound of claws stepping on the iron mesh sounded. Jing Tan moved his ears, but ignored it. During the National Day holiday, many people went out, but not General's home. There were too many people going out on National Day, but its owner didn't. Instead, he brought General back to school. However, General spent most of the year playing outside, wandering in various nature reserves. Anyway, it didn't need money to play. Seeing that Zheng Tan ignored it, General stopped for a while. However, Zheng Tan didn't close his eyes for long before he heard the long-lost voice from the balcony on the 4th floor diagonally below. Why are the flowers so red? Why are they so red? Red like a burning fire. Red yours? Zheng Tan tugged at her ears and turned to leave. As she walked, she glanced downstairs. She was just casually looking, but then she saw a familiar car driving in. F***CK, why did Third Master Fong, this busy guy, come again? Fong Xiaokong had called Jiaopa. He had just driven from Beijing to Chuhua City today. Originally, he had only brought some seafood to the Jiao family. If there was no one at home, he would bring it directly to Associate Professor Jiao's office. However, knowing that the cat was at home, he came directly to the eastern courtyard to take a look. However, on the phone, Associate Professor Jiao's tone was a little strange. This made the Third Master Fong even more interested. He hadn't seen the cat during the holiday. What did it do again? After parking the car, the Third Master Fong looked up at the 5th floor. His eyesight was very good, and he happened to see the black tips of the ears. Black charcoal, come down and open the door, the Third Master Fong shouted from downstairs. Zheng Tan hesitated for a while, but still opened the door and went downstairs to swipe the access card. Hey, why are you cooped up at home? Aren't you usually outside at this time? Before the Third Master Fong could finish his sentence, he saw the black cat in front of him with half of its beard. He was silent for a while, then squatted down and laughed. What the hell are you laughing about? Zheng Tan ignored him. After swiping the access card, he went upstairs directly. Wait, let me take a breather. The Third Master Fong stood up and walked upstairs with a bag. I also brought you some seafood as snacks. Panting, he went up to the 5th floor and put down the bag. The Third Master Fong stood in front of Zheng Tan and looked at Zheng Tan's beard carefully. Then, he took out his phone and prepared to take a photo. These days, only people like the Third Master Fong used high-end phones and took good photos. However, Zheng Tan was troubled. Wasn't it just a short beard? What was so strange about it? Don't move, don't move. I'll take a photo for my daughter. Hey, don't move. Turn around and take a look. Zheng Tan directly slapped the Third Master Fong's phone away. He picked up the phone and tried to make 2 calls. It was still working. He put it in his pocket. The Third Master Fong took a paper cup from the water dispenser and drank some water. Then, he sat on the sofa and rested for a while. He said to Zheng Tan, your beard should grow out next month, right? Without waiting for Zheng Tan to answer, the Third Master Fong continued, it should grow out. When I was young, I saw a big tabby cat whose beard was curled up. It grew out in 3 weeks. Yours should be about the same. Zheng Tan was speechless. My beard was curled up even more. How about this? I'll take you out to play next month when I have time. There are many people with pets there. I'll come to find you then, and you can help me socialize. There are a few customers who like cats. If you're there, the business talks will be smoother. I'll let your cat father know and set a time first. The Third Master Fong's self-answering mode lasted for 2 minutes. Then he took a phone call and left in a hurry. He probably hadn't finished his business in Chuhua City yet. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been running around. Even a big businessman like him had his worries. Socializing was an essential part of his business. Whether he was a small office worker or a big boss with a lot of money, everyone had their own worries behind the halo. After the Third Master Fong left, Zheng Tan looked at the calendar on the wall. His beard should grow back in a month. In the evening, Celestine came over. The National Day holiday had just ended. The second day after the Jiao family came back, Celestine came over. But when he saw that Zheng Tan didn't want to go out with his half-grown beard, he didn't take him out. Today, Celestine didn't have much hope that Zheng Tan would go to the night building with him, but he didn't expect that Zheng Tan would really want to go out today. When you're in a bad mood, you need to vent. Zheng Tan was depressed. Celestine came at the right time. In the car, Celestine looked at the cat in the back seat. Its beard had grown a little, but it was obviously only half-grown. He heard that it was in a bad mood recently. Suddenly, Celestine had a bad feeling. In the evening, Yi Hao, Ran Qi, and Leopard came to the night building to relax. The night building wasn't the only business in his hands. He was usually busy outside. When he was free, he would come to the night building to listen to the East Palace's performance and relax. Before he came, Yi Hao had received a report from his subordinates and knew that Wei Leng had also come. However, he didn't know that Wei Leng had brought a cat with him because Zheng Tan had been nestled in the backpack and no one had seen him. He felt that it was embarrassing to let others see half of his beard. Yi Hao and the other two came to the third floor. At the door of Celestine's private room, they saw Celestine squatting there and smoking. "What's wrong? Why are you squatting here?" Chapter 114. Yi Hao slammed the door shut and looked at Celestine. "Why is it here again?" Celestine got up and stretched his body. "That guy is in a bad mood and came over to vent. But this time, he didn't drink. He'll be fine after roaring for an hour or two." "An hour or two? How long have you been here?" Yi Hao asked. Celestine took out his phone and looked at it. "More than 50 minutes. Almost an hour." Yi Hao shook his head and was about to suggest a change of location. He didn't want to keep Celestine waiting here, but before he could say anything, the door opened. This time, there was no magic sound. Zheng Tan opened the door himself. After opening the door, he didn't look at the people outside. He ran to the sofa and lay down to rest. He was tired from singing and had vented most of his emotions. He drank a glass of water and peed. His mood was much better. Yi Hao looked at the open door and signaled to Celestine to decide. Celestine pursed his lips and walked into the room with a cigarette in his mouth. Yi Hao followed him in. Leopard and Ran Qi behind him were hesitant, especially Ran Qi. He looked like he had been constipated for a long time. After being bumped by Leopard, he touched the necklace he was wearing, took a deep breath, and walked in. Zheng Tan didn't want to know what these people were talking about, but his ears caught a few key words and it still piqued his interest. Yi Hao was going to take over the abandoned project around Tsinghua University and develop that area. In fact, he had been eyeing that piece of land for a long time, but he hadn't decided to do it. In the past, there was a huge wave because of that project. At that time, Yi Hao was wise to protect himself and didn't get involved. Later, there was a change in personnel and a group of people fell one after another. A few years ago, the person who could do whatever he wanted in Tsinghua City disappeared. It wasn't until this summer that Yi Hao started paying attention to that piece of land again. However, even now, it was not easy to make a move. This was also the reason why he had been looking for a way. "How are things now?" Celestine asked. "I've contacted the third Master Fong and made an appointment. We'll talk then." Yi Hao rubbed his forehead and said, "We don't necessarily need the third Master Fong's help. We just want to know what the third Master Fong's attitude is right now. If he's not bad, it shouldn't be a problem." "Which place did the third Master Fong take a fancy to?" Celestine was curious. Zheng Tan also perked up his ears to listen. Yi Hao shook his head. "I've only heard rumors. However, no one knows what the third Master Fong is thinking. No matter what, it's always good to give him a heads up. Now that the Shaoguang Group's development plans and trends have been made public, we can see that they are coming aggressively. Some of them look very risky, but I believe that the third Master Fong is not the kind of person who does things without confidence." Zheng Tan was not very clear about what Yi Hao and the others talked about. He did not understand some of the things that were going on. He only knew that Yi Hao was preparing to start on the area not far from the side door of Tsinghua University. He just did not know when he would be able to take it down. He did not know when the real construction would start. After chatting with Yi Hao for a while, Celestine said goodbye and left. After Zheng Tan and Celestine left, Yi Hao sat in the room for a while. Suddenly, he asked Leopard and Ran Qi, "Do you think I should open a room especially for that cat to vent?" Ran Qi, who had just relaxed a little because of the cat's departure, stiffened. "Open a room especially for that cat?" Looking at the whole country, who would open a VIP room especially for a cat? Just to let that cat vent by singing? Also, if he opened a room especially for that cat, did that mean that the cat would come often in the future? Maybe it would even bring some friends? Leopard and Ranchi did not say anything. After Yi Hao smoked 2 cigarettes in a row, he got up and left. It seemed that he already had an idea. However, Leopard and Ranchi did not know what decision Yi Hao had made. On the other hand, on the way back, Zheng Tan suddenly remembered that Yi Hao and the others did not seem to notice the problem with his beard. Was it because of the color of his fur and the light at that time that they did not notice it? It was not until he returned to the Jiao family that Zheng Tan came up with an explanation. Not everyone could tell at first glance that something was wrong with you. If they did not pay enough attention, if they did not care enough, if they did not pay enough attention to you, how could they notice those details? Some people had pets, and they would be able to tell if their pets were in a slightly bad condition. Whether they were active, whether they were walking normally, whether the tip of their nose was moist, whether there were any changes in their habits, etc. But for some people, even if their pets were on the verge of death, they might not be able to tell. It was the same for pets, and it was the same for people. For example, if the Jiao Pa or the 2 children coughed, the Jiao Ma would be able to tell that there was something wrong with the cough. She was afraid that it might be a cold or pharyngitis, and she would quickly take measures to prevent the situation from developing in a worse direction. However, how many people living in the surrounding area would be able to think like that? In Zheng Tan's case, the Jiao family seemed to be able to notice his abnormality immediately. When he thought of this, Zheng Tan had a very strange feeling. He could not tell exactly what it was. When he was still a human, he had never felt this way. Perhaps he did not notice it at that time. After venting the frustration in her heart and figuring out some problems, Zheng Tan no longer cared so much about the bearded man. Now that his beard had grown a lot, everything was slowly getting better. Since he was in a good mood, Zheng Tan began to feel restless again. The weather outside was good. Sometimes, Zheng Tan would see Huang and the others rolling on the grass and basking in the sun. It was impossible not to be envious. Basking in the sun on the balcony was very different from basking in the sun outside. Today, Zheng Tan finally decided to go out for a walk. The beard that had been growing for 2 weeks was much longer than when it was just cut. Although it still looked shorter than when it was in good condition, it was much more pleasing to the eye. Besides, if he went out, people might not notice his beard. Besides, Zheng Tan did not want to care about what those unimportant people thought of him. After swiping the access card and going out of the building, Zheng Tan breathed in the warm afternoon air and felt the warmth of the sun. He was in a good mood. When he came to the grass in the family's courtyard, he saw Huang lying there and basking in the sun again. The sheriff was playing with bugs in the bushes. Depang was squatting by the side, squinting his eyes and twitching his ears from time to time. This guy would only come out to play when the old lady was out. If the old lady was home, this guy would squat on the balcony and not go anywhere. Seeing Zheng Tan come over, Huang, who was lying on the grass, rolled on the grass and rubbed his back. Then he stretched out his claws and scratched Zheng Tan's tail. He shook his tail to get away from Huang's claws. Zheng Tan lay on the grass and yawned. Then he played with the grass beside his claws. While he was playing, a person came in from the courtyard gate. That person was probably going to take a shortcut and cross the grass to get to the building. However, when he walked on the grass, he saw the cat over there. Zheng Tan felt that the person looked familiar. After thinking for a long time, she remembered that this was the guy who lived on the first floor of the building closer to the building. He was the one who was having sex with his girlfriend early in the morning without drawing the curtains. Later, Zheng Tan went over to take a look a few times. The curtains were tightly drawn and only opened when there was no one in the room. Originally, Zheng Tan thought that the person would pick up a stone and throw it at him, so he was ready to dodge. He didn't expect that the person would just stand there and change his expression a few times. Then, as if he didn't see anything, he continued to walk. However, he deviated from his route and walked a lot faster to avoid Zheng Tan and the others. What Zheng Tan didn't know was that the person did have the idea of picking up a stone and throwing it at the cat, but he resisted. Later, he asked a few people in the courtyard and they told him that there were 2 cats and 2 dogs in the east courtyard that he couldn't provoke. The 2 dogs referred to the bull-headed terrier Zhuang and Sanxue, the Sahara dog. The former's fighting strength was ferocious, and everyone in the courtyard knew that. It made a name for itself in catching thieves, and it had a fierce reputation. When it went for a walk, it even fought with some of the dogs in the west courtyard. It was a person that didn't care about life when it was fierce. On the other hand, Sahara Dog was a little smart, liked to cause trouble, and was vengeful. If you offended it, it would shit in front of your door, push you from behind when you weren't paying attention, or pull your shoelaces, or pee on your bedding that was exposed to the sun. In short, it was very annoying. However, it had a strong background, and you had to look at its owner before you hit it. As for the two cats, they were both in the bee family building. One was Fat Pear Blossom, and the other was Black Cat. It wasn't as detailed as the introduction of the two dogs. It was very simple, but it gave people endless fanciful thoughts. However, it was precisely because of this that people were even more afraid. Although what the two cats and two dogs said was a joke, there was truth in it. Therefore, every time that person entered the courtyard, he would avoid the two cats and two dogs when he saw them. When he walked out of the lawn, that person turned his head to look at the cat that was sunbathing on the lawn. He saw that the black cat was still looking at him. That gaze made people panic, and they felt that if they looked at it a few more times, they would have goosebumps. Shaking his head, that person quickened his pace and left. Zheng Tan didn't know what that person was thinking, and he could only wonder why that person looked at him as if he was looking at a scourge. However, it was only a moment of curiosity, and he threw it to the back of his mind. At around 4 o'clock, Jiao Yuan and the others rode their bicycles back. Because the whole school was cleaning today, they didn't have to be on duty, so they just cleaned up casually and came back. After entering the courtyard, they went to their respective buildings. When they parted ways, Zheng Tan heard them talking about the morning run. It was very strange. Why would that little brat Jiao Yuan decide to go for a morning run? When they were eating dinner that night, Jiao Yuan mentioned it. Only then did Zheng Tan know that the autumn sports meet was about to begin. Unlike the sports meet in primary school, the competition between junior high school students was more intense. Children in their puberty period began to have all kinds of ideas. At the beginning of junior high school, many boys hadn't started to grow, and girls generally matured earlier, so many boys still looked small. For example, Jiao Yuan and the others were about the same height as the little girl Litmus. Sometimes, they felt that they couldn't compare to the little girl. However, Xianxia was an exception. This guy was strong, and he was considered tall in class. He was also more active. As soon as he entered the class, he got the position of sports committee member. As for the few of them, the teachers took good care of them, not only because of Xianxia's mother, but also because some of the children who studied in this junior high school were the children of the teachers of Tsinghua University. Therefore, the teachers in the school would take good care of these students. Among these teachers, there might also be children who were studying in Tsinghua University, and they would also need the teachers of Tsinghua University to take care of them. Everyone was well aware of this. However, because of this, small groups were formed in the class. For example, Jiao Yuan and the others were in a small group. In this small group, there was a sports committee member. In addition, there were many events in the sports meet that hadn't been signed up for long, and the students in the same class weren't very familiar with each other. Xianxia pulled Jiao Yuan and the others into the group. As for the rest of the events that hadn't been signed up yet, they could each choose one. Chapter 115. For students who had just entered junior high school, 800 meters was already difficult enough, let alone 1,500 meters. That would be too tiring. Zheng Tan looked at Jiao Yuan with pity in his eyes. However, Jiao Yuan and the others had to be loyal to their friends. In order not to embarrass Xianxia, the sports committee member, they decided to train tomorrow and the day after. Whoever had the best stamina would take on the toughest task. The spots for the 800-meter and 1,500-meter races had not been decided yet, so Jiao Yuan did not know which one he could run in. He made an appointment with the others to run at the sports field in Tsinghua University, which was closest to the residential area. Jiao Pa supported Jiao Yuan's decision, but he still told Jiao Yuan to do what he could. There was only 1 week left before the sports meet, so there was a limit to what they could do in 7 days. Jiao Ma had also changed her diet recently. She wanted to give Jiao Yuan more supplements. Early the next morning, Jiao Yuan got out of bed. After breakfast, he ran out to meet up with the others in the courtyard. Little Pomelo was bored at home. She did not have a lot of homework, and she had already finished half of it last night. She could finish the rest by tonight. After watching TV for a while, she told Jiao Ma that she was going out with Zheng Tan. They went to the sports field to meet Jiao Yuan and the others. Little Pomelo took the car keys and pushed the children's car out. The 2 wheels at the back had already been removed. Jiao Pa had also adjusted the seat according to Little Pomelo's height. Zheng Tan jumped into the basket, and Little Pomelo rode the car to the sports field. There were many people walking around on a Saturday. Some people who were planning to go shopping had woken up early. The weather was not cold, so there were not many people who stayed in bed. Some passers-by would cast curious glances at Little Pomelo and Zheng Tan when they saw them. They would greet their acquaintances as well. Many people took their pets for a walk in the morning, and Niu Zhuangzhuang was one of them. From afar, Zheng Tan could see the deformed body and the black eye pattern. Every time Zheng Tan saw Old Man Yan take Niu Zhuangzhuang out for a walk, he felt as if Niu Zhuangzhuang was holding Old Man Yan's leash. Niu Zhuangzhuang led the way in front with the dog leash taut. Every once in a while, it would find a place to raise its hind leg to pee. There were also people doing morning exercises at the sports field. There were many people running. After parking the car at the bicycle shed, Little Pomelo and Zheng Tan walked to the side of the sports field. Jiao Yuan and the others were easy to find. They were huddled together and seemed to be arguing about something. Litmus sat on the horizontal bar, swinging her legs and scolding them one by one. Jiao Yuan, Suan Lan Tianzhu, and Xiong Xiong were sitting on the ground. One was holding his knees, and the other was leaning against the sports equipment. They were all panting. For people like you, 800 meters is already hard enough. Don't go for 1,500 meters. When Zheng Tan walked over, he happened to hear Litmus's words. Looking at Jiao Yuan and the others, he guessed that they had a bad start. Seeing Little Pomelo and Zheng Tan coming over, Jiao Yuan was surprised. Then he felt embarrassed, as if he had lost face as an elder brother. Compared to Jiao Yuan, Xiong Xiong was even more embarrassed. He was a sports committee member after all. Being criticized like this, he felt embarrassed. He looked at Litmus, who was sitting on the horizontal bar, and said, "Hey, Litmus, it's easy for you to say. Why don't you run?" "I don't need to run this. I only need to run the 200-meter and relay. Besides, we have a big killer among the girls. We don't need to worry about anything. We just need to break the record and get extra points. What about you guys? I don't think the girls will be in first place and the boys will be in last place and drag down the team's results," Litmus said slowly. There was a famous sports athlete in their class, and she was a girl. Although Jiao Yuan and the others were not familiar with her in primary school, they had heard that she was very famous in her primary school. She often broke records and even took part in the city's competitions. Yin flourishes and Yang declines. Zheng Tan thought of this phrase. But Jiao Yuan and the others were miserable. They were despised by a girl, and it was embarrassing for them. "I don't believe that I can't achieve anything in a week." Xiong Xiong waved his fist and showed that he was determined. After pausing for a while, Xiong Xiong said, "Maybe I can also get a good figure while I'm at it." Everyone, ahem. "Xiong Xiong, I'm not trying to discourage you. Some things are innate," said Lan Tianzhu. It seemed that Xiong Xiong had been quite strong since he was young, and he had never lost any weight. Of course, he was not like those people who were full of fat balls. He was stronger than the average student, and he had signed up for the shot put event. Jiao Yuan took 2 deep breaths and patted the dust off his pants. He said, "Theoretically speaking, it depends on the red and white muscles." The others looked at Jiao Yuan and waited for him to explain. Jiao Yuan was a little proud. He had seen this by chance when he was flipping through the magazine that his father subscribed to. He cleared his throat and continued to explain. Human muscles are divided into red and white muscles. Red muscles are used for endurance, while white muscles are used for absolute strength and explosive power. Literally, one is related to endurance and can be linked to long-distance running, while the other is related to explosive power and can be linked to sprinting. However, human muscle types are innate. That is to say, the number of white and red muscles are innate. Therefore, some people are born with good endurance, and some people are born with explosive power. Therefore, when we train, we can only make these muscles more developed, but we cannot change their type. Many people do aerobic exercise to lose weight. This is because aerobic exercise uses red muscles. The characteristic of red muscles is that it is not easy to develop, and it consumes a lot of energy. That is why you can see those long-distance runners on TV. Almost none of them are fat and strong. After saying this, Jiao Yuan looked at Xianxia, who was fat and strong. Xianxia rolled up his sleeves and pretended to beat someone up. Jiao Yuan was not afraid of him. He continued, "As for the good body that Xianxia mentioned, it should be the kind that grows muscles. The so-called growing muscles is to make the muscles fat. The main purpose of muscle hypertrophy is to train white muscles. The growth of white muscles requires a lot of intensity and speed. That is why many people buy dumbbells or other equipment to train instead of doing Tai Chi or yoga slowly." Sue nodded seriously. Then he pointed at Xianxia and said, "So if this guy wants to have a good body, he should run long distance to get rid of the fat on his body. Then he can do exercises to grow muscles." "I think so." Jiao Yuan picked up the cup and drank some water. After talking so much and running just now, his throat was a little sore. "Xianxia, I'll leave the 1,500 meters to you. The mighty 8-pack is waiting for you in front." Lan Tianzhu patted Xianxia's shoulder and said. Xianxia clicked his tongue and said, "In front is too far. I can't see it." After running 2 laps, they were almost exhausted. Moreover, it was not even 800 meters. If it was 800 meters, they would have to run 2 more laps. Strictly speaking, not everyone can have an 8-pack. Jiao Yuan continued to show off. The rest of the people looked over again. Jiao Yuan felt a sense of accomplishment. It was indeed beneficial to read more of his father's magazines. There's a thing called tendons. It makes the abdominal rectus abdominis look like pieces. 4 tendons are divided into 8-pack abs. 3 tendons are divided into 6-pack abs. Unfortunately, this thing called tendons is innate. It won't increase or decrease as you train. Therefore, some people have 6-pack abs, while others have 8-pack abs. This is related to genetics. Xianxia was stunned. Then he lifted his shirt and revealed his fat belly. He even took a deep breath to see if he had developed those well-defined abdominal muscles. Unfortunately, he only had fat. The mighty 8-pack abs became so unattainable. "Aya, Xianxia, you're being a hooligan." Litmus covered her eyes and shouted. Zheng Tan, regardless of whether he could develop 8-pack abs or not, he still had to run this step. Zheng Tan and little Pomelo sat on the steps next to them and watched them run 2 laps. They stopped to rest for a while before they started running again. Moreover, they were all jogging. They probably couldn't run anymore. People who didn't usually run would be tired after running for a while. Maybe they couldn't feel it at the time, but it would definitely be difficult the next day. After running for half a day in the morning, Jiao Yuan and the rest prepared to rest well in the afternoon and continue as usual tomorrow. During dinner, Jiao Pa asked Jiao Yuan how he felt about running today. Jiao Yuan replied, "Unattainable 8-pack abs." When they heard Jiao Yuan say that they would train as usual tomorrow, Jiao Pa and Jiao Ma looked at each other and smiled. They didn't say much. Sure enough, early the next morning, Jiao Yuan turned off the alarm after it rang. Then he walked to the master bedroom in his slippers and was about to call the others. He felt pain all over his body and didn't want to move. Before Jiao Yuan could pick up the phone rang. It was Xianxia. He was in the same situation as Jiao Yuan. He didn't want to run. Other than Xianxia, the others were in the same situation. Since Xianxia didn't want to run, they just stayed at home and rested. Jiao Yuan and the rest didn't fully warm up before running yesterday. They started running without warming up. Now they tasted the bitter fruit. Although they usually rode bikes and played basketball occasionally, they had never run like this before. The most depressed one was Xianxia. If this continued, who would be able to take the long-distance running spot? On Sunday morning, everyone rested at home. In the afternoon, the kids gathered together to discuss. This time, Xianxia took out a list of names from the class. It took him a lot of effort to get it. He asked Jiao Yuan and the others to help him come up with ideas. However, Jiao Yuan and the others weren't class committee members. They didn't have much contact with the other students in the class. They weren't as familiar with the other students as Xiong. As for Litmus, she was the study committee member. She knew most of the people in the class, but she was mainly familiar with the girls. She wasn't familiar with the boys, so she couldn't help. What should I do? I've already promised. If I can't do it, I'll be despised. Xiong slapped the list on his face. You're just worried that the vice class monitor will despise you. It's okay. I'm familiar with her. I'll help you. Litmus said righteously. Zheng Tan leaned on the tree and listened to their conversation. He couldn't help but sigh. Zheng Tan recalled that he didn't participate in sports events from elementary school to university. He rarely participated in group activities. Every time, he would take his friends to the arcade for the whole day. He didn't have any recollection of sports events. No, he did have some recollection. It seemed that when he was in high school, he and his friends went to the playground to see a long-legged girl. But his memory was a little blurry. Chapter 116. Since he had decided to go to Jiao Yuan's sports meet, Zheng Tan decided to scout the area first. Tsinghua University was not very far from Jiao Yuan's school, but it was not immediately accessible. Zheng Tan planned to leave from Tsinghua University's side door, which was closest to the junior high school, and then walk in that direction. After sending little Pomelo to Futong Elementary School in the morning, Zheng Tan ran all the way to the side door. The side door was narrow, and the people coming in and out were all students from Futong Elementary School. Many of them were pushing their bicycles. Zheng Tan did not want to squeeze with them, so he jumped over the wall and walked towards the junior high school. Zheng Tan had never been to Jiao Yuan's school. He only remembered the route that Jiao Ma took every time and the markings on the map. Moreover, the junior high school was not very far from here, so he should be able to find it. After exiting from the side door, Zheng Tan could clearly feel the hustle and bustle of the street. It was different from the bustling central square, but it was very lively. There were many old residents living in this area. Aunties who were buying groceries were talking about today's prices and what they had bought. Their conversation with Tsinghua City's accent could be heard everywhere. There were no tall buildings, no luxurious cars, and the road was uneven. Bicycles, electric bikes, and some popular family cars were the main elements of the street. This was the life of ordinary people, and the liveliness seeped into the mundane. If it was a school bus, it would not take this road. Therefore, Zheng Tan could not find a school bus with Tsinghua University's name on it that went to Futong High School. There were buildings on both sides of the street, and on the side Zheng Tan was walking, many of the buildings were surrounded by walls. Zheng Tan directly jumped over the wall and walked on it. He did not have to fight with the aunties who had just finished buying groceries in the morning on the sidewalk. There were many shops on the other side of the street. There were many breakfast shops, and Zheng Tan could hear the sound of fried dough sticks. The local breakfast always attracted many students and office workers to eat there. However, Tsinghua University was too big. This place was not very close to the school's main entrance, teaching area, and student dormitories. Students who lived far away and did not have time could only come here once in a while. Zheng Tan walked on the wall and looked at the people coming and going on the street. He felt a little emotional. It seemed that every time you walked out of Tsinghua University, you would see a different scenery. As he was thinking, Zheng Tan heard a cat meow not far in front of him. A 7-month-old kitten jumped onto the wall and blocked Zheng Tan's path. However, after the kitten looked at Zheng Tan, it walked forward. It seemed that it was on the same path as Zheng Tan. The cat came out from a building next door. It jumped directly on the wall and did not walk on the sidewalk. Perhaps, for cats, this kind of wall was a more suitable path. Not only could it allow them to overlook the situation below, but it could also avoid humans so that they would not be kicked by people on the sidewalk. Since it was on the same route, Zheng Tan did not think too much about it. He did not know the kitten, so he did not take the initiative to greet it. After walking for a while, Zheng Tan found that the kitten in front of him paused and looked up. Looking past the kitten, Zheng Tan saw that there was another cat in front of him. It was big, and it was walking in the opposite direction of Zheng Tan. Was this a narrow path? Do you want to have a fight? Zheng Tan was prepared to wait and see. After all, the wall was too narrow. It was impossible for two cats to walk side by side. In such a situation, would the two cats fight directly, or would the other cat jump down to avoid the attack? Unfortunately, neither was the case. To Zheng Tan's surprise, the cat in front of him and the big cat in front of him did not stop. They still walked at their original speed and did not intend to fight. When they met, the kitten lowered its body and went under the leg of the cat in front of it. The big cat also cooperated and raised its paw. Soon, the kitten successfully went under, and the big cat walked toward Zheng Tan. Zheng Tan looked at the cat in front of him. It was about the same size as him. He guessed that it was not someone who would back down. The cat came closer and closer. Zheng Tan was on guard against the cat suddenly scratching, but the cat did not seem to want to fight, nor did it show any aggression. Just when the cat was less than 10 centimeters away from Zheng Tan, it stopped. Then it shook the tip of its tail, raised its neck, raised its chin, and moved its front legs. Its eyes seemed to say, "Come on, you can go under." Zheng Tan was speechless. F***ck, this kind of method of going under one's crotch should be left to other cats. Zheng Tan thought for a while, tilted his head and looked at the wall in front of him. He estimated, and then prepared to jump. He jumped over the big cat and looked at the narrow wall approaching. Finally, he landed smoothly. Fortunately, his judgment and control were much better now. Although he fell a little to the side, he was still stable. Zheng Tan turned his head and looked at the big cat. He raised his head and walked away. The big cat shook its tail and did not look at Zheng Tan anymore. It continued to stare in front of it and walk with its head held high. When the kitten in front of Zheng Tan came to a boundary, it jumped down. It had arrived at its destination. Zheng Tan looked in the direction it was going. It was also an old residential area. The greenery inside was not bad. It probably had playmates there. Jumping from one wall to another, Zheng Tan continued to walk forward. As he walked, he looked at the buildings on both sides. He did not know which side of the street Jiao Yuan's school was on, so he had to pay more attention. Also, that junior high school was not as big as Tsinghua University. He did not know how big the school gate was. If the gate was smaller, he might miss it if he did not pay attention. After walking for about 5 minutes, Zheng Tan moved his ears and heard the sound of reading. Very good, it was right in front. The first thing Zheng Tan saw was not the school gate but the teaching block. Walking on the wall, he could hear the sound of students studying coming from the teaching block. There were teachers leading the students. Among the young voices, there were some that sounded lazy and sleepy, some that were yelling at the top of their lungs, and some that belonged to little girls. They were all filled with the emotions and vitality that belonged to children of their age. Students were reading, and the sound of reading. Zheng Tan could see the students sitting in the classroom by the window on the first floor. There were a few boys sitting at the back who were not very obedient. They stuck their heads out from behind their books and lingered on a certain figure. Zheng Tan could not help but laugh. Pure and innocent youth. In comparison, the children at this time were still considered innocent. They were not like the precocious people who would be affected by the internet a few years later. Not many students dared to stare at the window in a daze. Occasionally, a student noticed the black cat on the wall outside and looked over. The next moment, he was called up by the teacher to answer a question. Zheng Tan did not stop there. He continued to walk forward. He wanted to see the school gate. Since he was here to scout, he had to familiarize himself with the area. The junior high school was a relatively ordinary one. It was definitely not as big as Tsinghua University. Even the school gate was only as big as the side gate of Tsinghua University. After looking around, Zheng Tan felt that there was nothing worth studying. He jumped off the wall and walked into the school. Of course, Zheng Tan did not dare walk down the main road of the school like that. He had no idea what the rules were, and he was not sure whether the security guards would come to chase him away. Therefore, he followed the flower beds and used the greenery as cover to walk deeper into the school. Zheng Tan did not immediately go to the school building to look for Jiao Yuan's classroom. He looked at other places such as the cafeteria, the snack bar, the parking lot, etc. Then he went to the field to look around. In less than half an hour, Zheng Tan had walked around the school. He had familiarized himself with the main buildings and the layout of the field. Finally, he came to the school building. There was only one school building, and it was quite big. When Zheng Tan was at home, he heard from Jiao Ma and Jiao Yuan that the first and second floors of the school building were for the first-year students. The third and fourth floors were for the second-year students, and the top 2 floors were for the third-year students. The teacher's office was at one end, and the toilets were at the other end. There were stairs at both ends and in the middle. This school did not differentiate between fast and slow classes, at least not for the first and second-year students. It was a different story for the graduating classes. Zheng Tan remembered that Jiao Yuan's class was the first year's class. Xianxia's mother felt that even though there was no fast or slow class, the number 1 gave her a sense of superiority. Therefore, she pulled Xianxia and a few others into the first year's class. Since it was the first year's class, it should be on this floor, and it should be on the first floor. Zheng Tan looked at the class numbers on each door and found the location of the first year's class. It was near the teacher's office, so it should be the focus of attention. Because there was a corridor in front, there were always people walking around. Some were teachers on patrol, and some were students who needed to pee. It was not convenient for Zheng Tan to sneak a peek. After thinking for a while, Zheng Tan went to the back of the school building. He aimed at a window at the back and jumped up. The few windows at the bottom were pasted with newspapers. Probably because there were no curtains and the sun was glaring, the students inside used newspapers. However, there was still a small corner left for them to observe the scenery outside when they had nothing to do. Zheng Tan jumped onto the windowsill of the last window. He originally wanted to stand up and look in from the window above, but he saw that there was a small corner of the window below that was not pasted with newspapers. He looked in from that small corner. Sitting next to the window was a boy. He was not listening to the math teacher on the podium. At the moment, he was using an automatic pencil to fill in the 0 in the book. Then he looked for the 4, 6, 8, 9, and filled in the empty space. After he was done, he used an eraser to erase it. Zheng Tan suddenly remembered that he had done this kind of stupid thing before. Other than that, he also knew how to draw in the textbook and add a few strokes to the characters in the book. Thinking about it, it was a long time ago that he used a pen to write. Later on, he used a computer to type. A lot of the homework in university was directly printed and handed in. If he needed a pen to write, he would pay someone to do it for him. In short, Zheng Tan had forgotten the last time he held a pen. It was not known if the boy sensed that someone was watching his every move. He looked up at the teacher on the podium and frowned. Then, he turned his head and was about to look at the scenery outside from the corner that was not pasted with paper. In the end, he met someone's eyes. Chapter 117. The boy was so shocked that he almost dropped the pencil in his hand. If it weren't for the fact that they were still in class, he would have jumped out of his seat. The math teacher on the podium glanced at him. The boy quickly sat back down and pretended to scribble in his notebook. After 2 minutes, the boy glanced at the teacher on the podium. When he saw that the teacher was no longer looking at him, he carefully turned his head to look outside the window again. The corner without the newspaper was limited, so the boy could only see a furry creature outside. He carefully identified the silhouette of the shadow on the window and connected it to what he saw earlier. The boy confirmed that it was a cat squatting outside the window, a black cat. This was the first time he had seen a cat squatting outside the window since school had started. Moreover, it was looking in from the corner where there were no newspapers. What a strange cat. Zheng Tan was originally worried that the child would scream or jump up in fright and attract the attention of others. She did not expect the child to react so quickly. He was calm enough and mentally strong enough. Zheng Tan peeked inside the corner again. He looked at the boy who kept glancing at him. Then he looked toward the front of the classroom. It wasn't hard to recognize Jiao Yuan and the others. Moreover, those guys sat relatively close to each other. The seats that the homeroom teacher had arranged for them were also not bad. They were in the middle and near the front. They didn't need to eat chalk dust and could see the blackboard clearly. They could also hear the teacher clearly. Jiao Yuan, who was sitting in the classroom, would never have guessed that his cat was squatting at the window at the back of the classroom. Zheng Tan looked around for a while before he left. Before he left, he ran to the teacher's office to take a look, but there was no one in the English team. Jiao Ma was probably on the second floor. After thinking about it, Zheng Tan didn't really go to the second floor to look for Jiao Ma. He wandered around the school for a while before he left. Just as Zheng Tan left, Jiao Ma walked to an open window in the teacher's office on the second floor. She wanted to look at the scenery in the distance to relieve her visual fatigue. She had just finished grading homework, so she was a bit tired. He didn't expect to see a black figure climbing up the wall when he looked down. Jiao Ma couldn't see it clearly because it was quite far away. Besides, there were a lot of black cats in the world, and this place was quite a distance away from Tsinghua University, so she didn't think that it was her cat. She just felt that it was a little familiar, but in the end, she shook her head and erased the suspicion in her heart. After the class, the boy sitting in the last row by the window opened the window and looked outside. He even stuck his head out to look, but he didn't see anything. He didn't see any cat. "Hey, Fu Lei, why are you opening the window? The sun is glaring." A student who was lying on the table next to him, taking the opportunity to catch up on sleep, shouted, "Oh!" Fu Lei closed the window. After thinking for a while, he tore the empty corner of the newspaper a little bigger. If the cat came to peek at him again, at least he wouldn't only see one eye. That would be too scary. Fu Lei, who had returned to his seat, leaned over the table and looked at the small group in front of him. Everyone in the class knew that the small group was a little special, and the teachers of all subjects took care of them. The other students in the class were envious and jealous. However, Fu Lei felt that it was very boring. He wasn't in the mood to study anyway, and he didn't interact with those students who were specially taken care of. On the other side, Zheng Tan walked back along the wall. This time, he was familiar with the road, so he walked a little faster. In fact, if he was bored every day, he could walk around here and familiarize himself with the surroundings. Not only Jiao Yuan, but little Pomelo would also be attending junior high school here in the future, and they would probably come here often in the next few years. Speaking of which, there were quite a lot of cats around here. When Zheng Tan came, he met 2 cats. When he went back, he saw 2 more cats standing on the wall with their fur standing up. They weren't the 2 from before. When the 2 cats saw Zheng Tan, one of them seemed to be startled. It lost its balance and slipped. At the same time, the other cat took the opportunity to slap it with its paw, and it fell directly from the wall. After it landed, it glanced at the wall, then ran away. As for the cat that stayed on the wall, it continued to stare at Zheng Tan with its fur standing up. Zheng Tan didn't stop, but continued to walk forward. The cat just made a few warning noises, then jumped off the wall and ran away. Zheng Tan looked at the long and intermittent cat path in front of him. He had a hunch that he would meet more cats on these walls in the future. After dinner that night, Jiao Yuan went out again. He and the others went to the sports field to train. All of them signed up for events. Except for the 800-meter and 1,500-meter events, which hadn't been decided yet, Jiao Yuan signed up for the 400-meter and relay events. Especially for the relay event, they had to train their cooperation. They didn't want to throw the baton away when the time came. Zheng Tan and little Pomelo were also watching them train at the side. Sometimes, there would be some university students who were training nearby who would talk to them. They would talk about the past and impart some of their experiences. "Black charcoal, let's run," little Pomelo said to Zheng Tan, putting her small cloth bag aside. Zheng Tan didn't mind. It was rare for little Pomelo to have this idea, so he decided to run with her. Affiliated primary school also had sports events, but little Pomelo had never participated in them before. Zheng Tan felt that sports events in primary schools were more perfunctory. They were mainly for entertainment, and parents liked to watch them. This year, little Pomelo didn't participate in any sports events. Oh, it seemed like she participated in the opening ceremony. She wore a silly outfit and held a garland with 2 flowers. Jiao Pa even took a picture of her. Little Pomelo kept the negatives, but little Pomelo stuffed the developed picture into the innermost part of the cabinet. Affiliated primary school's sports event was held in Tsinghua University's sports field. There were many students and parents around. On the day of the sports event, little Pomelo only helped to pass water and record. She didn't participate in the running. Before running, little Pomelo did some warm-up exercises. She waited for Jiao Yuan and the others to finish their second lap, then she followed them. Zheng Tan also followed beside her. Some people saw this scene and were quite surprised. Most people ran with dogs. It was rare to see someone running with a cat. Seeing little Pomelo, Jiao Yuan and the others, who were feeling tired after the second lap, held their breath and sped up. They couldn't be left behind by a primary school girl who was a few years younger than them, right? After the run, they walked back to the courtyard. Jiao Yuan and Su In both advised Xiong to ask his classmates one by one. If he really couldn't find anyone willing to take on the 1,500-meter race, then Xiong would have to sacrifice himself. Jiao Yuan knew his limits. He could run the 400 meters, but he couldn't run the 800 meters, let alone the 1,500 meters. It was better for him to go home and sleep. The next day, after sending little Pomelo to affiliated primary school, Zheng Tan went to Jiao Yuan's school again. Today was a leisurely day. Zheng Tan walked and stopped to observe the scenery along the way. He also memorized the names of the surrounding buildings and residential areas. He also memorized the street signs and the 2 buses that were going this way. The buses were always crowded with people. Some old ladies with shopping baskets might not lose to the university students. When Zheng Tan was in the mood, he would squat near a bus stop and watch the old ladies squeeze into the bus. Squeezing on the bus was also a skill. Just now, a skinny old lady had directly squeezed that burly man to the side. That man didn't dare to say anything. He had to respect the old and love the young, right? Today, Zheng Tan didn't meet the big cat or the small cat from yesterday. On the way, there was an unfamiliar fat cat lying on the wall, squinting its eyes and sunbathing. When it saw Zheng Tan walk over, it didn't react. It didn't even bother to move its butt. Zheng Tan jumped over again. He would probably use this method more often in the future. When he came to a fork in the road, there was a small alley. Zheng Tan jumped down from the wall. When he was about to jump to the other side of the wall, his ears suddenly twitched. He looked into the alley. Although this kind of place was indeed a good place to fight, it was broad daylight. Who would be bored enough to fight at this time? Listening closely, Zheng Tan could tell from the noise that the people involved in the fight were probably underage. This place wasn't far from Jiao Yuan's school. Could it be that they were from there? Jiao Yuan's school seemed to be the only school nearby. As for the nearest high school, it was a few stops away by bus. Since he had nothing to do, Zheng Tan decided to go and take a look. Following the sound, Zheng Tan walked into the alley. The alley was relatively narrow, and there probably weren't many people here. Some of the garbage piled up had a strong sour smell. There was also the smell of urine. Bang! A school bag was thrown out from a corner not far in front of Zheng Tan and hit the opposite wall. Other than that, the sound of a fist hitting a body and groaning was very clear. Zheng Tan slowly walked over to the corner and poked his head out to take a look. Yo, isn't this the kid I saw yesterday? There were 3 people at the corner. They were shorter. Zheng Tan saw the guy sitting at the back of Jiao Yuan's class by the window. The other 2 looked like they were either in the 3rd year of middle school or high school. However, the strange thing was that among the 3, the short boy was the only one standing. The other 2 were lying on the ground. One of them was even beaten to tears. When Zheng Tan looked over curiously, the boy standing there also noticed Zheng Tan. After the fight, Fu Lei shook his hands. Other than some scratches on his hands and some aches on his body, he was fine. When he was about to pick up the bag, he saw the black cat standing at the corner looking over. Was it the one from yesterday? Fu Lei sniffled and tidied up his jacket. He picked up the few pens that had fallen on the ground, patted the dust off the bag, and stuffed the pens inside. In the process, he kept glancing at Zheng Tan. Carrying the bag, Fu Lei looked up at the sun and walked out of the alley. When he stood at the fork, he hesitated for a moment. Then, he came to the zebra crossing and prepared to cross the road. Zheng Tan was curious. A kid the same age as Jiao Yuan. He didn't look that strong, but how could he be so good at fighting? Also, what was this kid trying to do? The road to school wasn't that way. Was he going to the hospital? On the way, Zheng Tan didn't see any hospitals. However, he saw a few small clinics. Out of curiosity, Zheng Tan followed him across the road since he had nothing to do. Chapter 118. Zheng Tan watched as the child walked into an old residential area. He paused for a moment before following him in. Originally, Zheng Tan only wanted to take a look at the residential area. When he saw the child walk into the building, he didn't follow. Unexpectedly, not long after the child entered the building, he walked out and looked at Zheng Tan. After experiencing some things, Zheng Tan was very sensitive to the good and evil in people's eyes. However, the child standing at the staircase only looked at him expectantly without any malice. After thinking for a moment, Zheng Tan walked over. Seeing the cat following him, Fu Lei smiled and walked into the building. Then he walked up the stairs step by step. In the past, he would run up the stairs in one breath. Now, he took a few steps to see if the cat was following him. Zheng Tan saw the child stop in front of a house on the 4th floor. Then, he took out a key from his bag and opened the door. After entering, he waved at Zheng Tan. Zheng Tan listened to the movements inside. Other than the child, there didn't seem to be anyone else in the house. He lifted his foot and walked in. It was a very ordinary house. It was simple, plain, and the furniture was relatively old. The house was about 50 square meters in total. It was smaller than a Jiao family. Zheng Tan felt a little cramped. There were 2 bedrooms in the house, 2 bedrooms and 1 living room. The child's room was the 2nd bedroom. It looked about the same size as little Pomelo's room. However, it was much messier than little Pomelo's room. There were a few books on the ground. When Zheng Tan walked over, he saw that one of the books had its cover open. The name on it was written, Fu Lei. Every stroke was very strong and looked very resolute. However, when these strokes were put together, they looked very different. Just as Zheng Tan was observing Fu Lei's small room, Fu Lei placed a fish head in front of Zheng Tan. This should be yesterday's dish. It was just taken out of the fridge and was still cold. The soup on the fish head was frozen. Zheng Tan looked at the fish head on a piece of draft paper in front of him and turned his head to look elsewhere. Not eating. Fu Lei was very puzzled. If it was the cat from the house next door, it probably wouldn't even wait for the fish head to be placed down before it ran away. Zheng Tan walked around the small room and then jumped onto the desk that was piled with junk. The books were placed messily, but there was an exception. A small dark wooden trophy was placed there. There was no other debris around the trophy, and it was very clean. It was not covered with a layer of dust like the piggy bank next to it. It was obvious that the owner often cleaned it and valued it more. I got this when I was 10 years old. Fu Lei picked up the small trophy and said proudly. When he was happy, the child would talk a lot. Like many people that Zheng Tan had met before, people would lower their guard in front of animals. They would say whatever was on their mind and would not hide it. For children, they would be happy to share some happy and proud things, even if it was just a cat that didn't know anything. From Fu Lei's description, Zheng Tan knew that this child had indeed practiced martial arts, but he came from an unorthodox background. Fu Lei's hometown was in the countryside. When he was young, his parents were busy, so he lived with his grandparents in the countryside. There was a master in the village who knew some martial arts and opened a small martial arts school. The children in the village would go and learn from him. Fu Lei was one of them. Learning martial arts was good for the body, so the elders were happy to do so. And this wooden trophy was carved by Fu Lei's unorthodox master himself. The carving was not bad. The wood was not the best, but it was not the kind that could be casually made. Fu Lei defeated 4 other children who were about his age in an exam and won the trophy. But later, the martial arts school could not continue. The unorthodox master and a few other young people in the village went to the south to work. It was said that they were working as security guards in the south. Every month, they could earn a few thousand yuan. After that, there was no news of them and they never came back. Although there was no one to teach him, Fu Lei still practiced by himself whenever he had time. When he was in the 5th grade, he was brought to the city by his parents. He did not buy a bicycle as his parents were busy and did not have the time. In order to save money, Fu Lei ran back and forth. Just like today, when he was blackmailed by senior students, he had encountered a few times. Every time he would fight to solve it. Sometimes he would win, but sometimes he would lose if there were more opponents. At the same time, Fu Lei left a bad impression on many people. Because of this, Many of Fu Lei's elementary school classmates were not willing to come in contact with him. After entering junior high school, some people also spread the news of Fu Lei's deeds. Therefore, even though school had just started not long ago, Fu Lei's label as a bad student had already been firmly fixed. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been directly thrown to the last row by the teacher and turned a blind eye to him, too lazy to discipline him. Fu Lei felt that he was not interested in studying. He thought that when he grew up, he would go to the south to work like his unorthodox master. When he first said these words, Fu Lei was beaten up by his father. The beating was so fierce that he was bedridden for a week. Every time Fu Lei mentioned that he did not want to study, his father would use his fists to settle it. Therefore, Fu Lei did not say it out loud in the end. He just muddled along like this with the mentality of muddling along. Due to the national policy, there was not much difficulty in getting into junior high school. Moreover, his household registration was in this area. His parents used some money to get him into this junior high school, hoping that he could study hard and improve every day. Fu Lei's response to this sentence was to pick his ears. Towards the end, Fu Lei's mood fell again. He felt that going to school was boring. It was better to be carefree in the small wooden dojo. Carefully putting away the wooden trophy, Fu Lei opened the drawer and took out a box of ointment. He applied the ointment on his bruised hand. Zheng Tan looked at the drawer. There were all kinds of ointment. Did Fu Lei's parents buy so many ointment for this child to fight? It was really embarrassing. After applying the ointment, Fu Lei sat on the ground and dragged his bag over. He took out a few pens and looked at them. He threw the ones with broken cases to the side and took out the refills. He could still use them later. While he was using the refills, the door lock rang. There was also the sound of a key opening the door. Fu Lei was shocked. He stuffed all the pens in his hand into his bag and said to Zheng Tan at the same time, "Hide." Zheng Tan did not know why Fu Lei said that, but he quickly hid under the bed. The next moment, the door opened. A man in his 40s walked in. When he saw Fu Lei, it was as if a dormant volcano suddenly erupted. "Fu Lei, you skipped class again." The man strode over and looked at the ointment beside him. He roared, "You got into a fight again?" Then, Zheng Tan heard the sound of Fu Lei being beaten. It was probably a spanking. This father's temper was really bad. He did not even ask for the reason and started hitting. However, this also showed that Fu Lei often got into fights and even skipped class. "I spent so much money to get you into that school just for you to play truant and fight. If I had not forgotten something at home and came back to get it, I would have let you escape. Bastard." Fu Lei's father scolded as he beat him. He rushed back to get something and saw Fu Lei without even drinking water. Now that he had beaten him for a while, he was probably tired. He sat by the bed and panted, but his mouth did not stop. Of all things, studying is the best. If you don't study, are you going to work like me in the factory all day for a meager salary? Nowadays, a doorman in a 5-star restaurant has to know a few foreign languages. Can't you see the motto I wrote for you? As he spoke, Fu Lei's father pointed to a piece of calligraphy that was pasted on Fu Lei's bed. As for Fu Lei's father, although he only went to primary school, he still learned some skills from his teacher. Now, he was working in a factory with that bit of skills. Fu Lei's mother also graduated from primary school, but her education wasn't high. Now, she was working as a salesperson in a small supermarket nearby. The couple suffered because they didn't have any education, so they especially hoped that Fu Lei could continue to study hard. They also used the great man's words, "Study hard and improve every day," as their motto. For this reason, Fu Lei's father specially used a brush to write a piece of paper and placed it on Fu Lei's bed. When he looked at it now, he realized that the piece of paper had been altered by Fu Lei. At this moment, the words pasted on the bed were, "Cowards study hard, husbands strive to improve." Fu Lei's father was about to scold him when he paused for 2 seconds. He took off his shoe and slapped Fu Lei. Zheng Tan looked from under the bed. He could not see the whole body, only 4 legs. However, from the sound, he could tell that Fu Lei had been beaten up badly by his father. But even so, Fu Lei, this brat, still did not make a sound. Fu Lei's father was probably in a hurry. After a few slaps, he found a piece of paper and wrote a leave request. He signed his name at the back and slammed it on the table. Then he walked out. He used too much strength and the door closed with a loud bang. Zheng Tan crawled out from under the bed and looked at Fu Lei, who was frowning and rubbing his butt. Then, his gaze fell on the piece of paper left by Fu Lei's father. After reading the contents, Zheng Tan did not know whether to laugh or cry. This was a leave request. Even the excuse was written on it. At the back was Fu Lei's father's signature. Zheng Tan did not know what to say about this father and son pair. However, Zheng Tan felt that Fu Lei's father's point of view was a bit extreme. If he knew that 10 years later, there would be a large number of university students who would bring all kinds of certificates to the job fair, selling their labor at a cheap price, and leading experts in many fields, how would he feel? However, this society was complicated. In a pyramid-shaped society, there would always be a few people at the top. Of course, Fu Lei's father's words were correct, but not completely correct. It all depended on how Fu Lei would deal with it in the future. Zheng Tan saw that after Fu Lei put away the slip of paper, he calmly packed his bag. He knew that this kind of situation was not rare. This guy was really good at taking a beating. Suddenly, Zheng Tan thought of something. If Fu Lei were to run 1,500 meters, what would happen? This guy ran here and there by himself when he was in elementary school. His physical strength was not bad. He should have good endurance. This would save Jiao Yuan and the others from having to worry about him all day long. The problem now was how to get Fu Lei to agree to run. They were in the same class. Fu Lei should know about the sports meet. No one had signed up for the long-distance race. He also knew about it. What did it mean that he had not signed up until now? Or was there another reason? Forget it. When the time comes, I'll let Jiao Yuan ask him. After staying at Fu Lei's place for a while, Zheng Tan looked at the alarm clock on the table. It was time to go home. You're leaving? Fu Lei saw the black cat running towards the door. He got up, walked over, and opened the door. Chapter 119. Fu Lei did not go to school in the morning, and his parents did not come home at noon. When he was at school, he always ate lunch in the student cafeteria. But now that he was at home, he could only think of a way to deal with it. Fu Lei rummaged through the fridge and bought 2 steamed buns from a small shop outside to eat lunch. Anyway, this kind of situation was normal for him. After eating and taking an afternoon nap, Fu Lei carried his backpack and went to school. He showed the letter of absence to the form teacher. The form teacher did not say much. It was not the first time, and it was useless to say anything. After coming out of the form teacher's office, Fu Lei sat in his seat in a daze. His desk mate only sighed. He skipped class again. Everyone was used to Fu Lei's skipping class style. Some people were envious of Fu Lei. At least Fu Lei had a letter of absence written by his parents. They did not have the ability to get such a letter of absence from their parents. Fu Lei was not in the mood to talk to the people beside him. He was in a heavy mood. In the morning, his father was in a hurry, so he was able to escape. But at night, he would not be able to go back. Looking at his father's reaction today, he would definitely be beaten up. After letting out a long sigh, Fu Lei heard the bell ring. He took out his textbook from his backpack and placed it on the table. He stared at the textbook in a daze. Halfway through the class, Fu Lei felt a shadow flash by the window. He was happy. He tilted his head and looked out from the corner. It was the black cat again. Zheng Tan, little Pomelo, and Jiao Wei went out together. After seeing little Pomelo enter the school, Zheng Tan went straight to the classroom. He jumped on the window and looked in. As expected, he saw Fu Lei in a daze again. Seeing Fu Lei looking in his direction, Zheng Tan looked at him and looked at the front of the classroom. Jiao Yuan and the others were very serious in class. At least from the back. Although this window was closed, the window near the front of the classroom was open. Moreover, even if all the windows here were closed, Zheng Tan could still clearly hear the teacher's lecture inside. It was language class now, and the language teacher was telling them about the things to pay attention to when writing an essay. It doesn't matter if what you write is real or not. When you write your essay, you have to pay attention to the following points. First, you can't include a single character name. Second, you can't include any traces of Qiong Yao. The teacher on the podium was very engrossed in his speech, but Zheng Tan saw that many people sitting below were secretly yawning. It couldn't be helped. During the first class in the afternoon, everyone's mental state wasn't very good. After the 11th day, the lunch break was shortened. Many students didn't take a nap at noon. It would be strange if they were in good spirits now. When the bell rang for the end of class, some of the sleepy students suddenly woke up and prepared to go out for a stroll. There were also some who relaxed their tense nerves and waited for the teacher to leave the classroom and lay down on their desks to sleep. When the bell rang for the end of class, Zheng Tan jumped down from the windowsill and lay down on the wall. He wondered if he should go look for Jiao Yuan and Jiao Ma. Fu Lei saw that the black cat was no longer on the windowsill, so he opened the window and looked out. Just then, Xianxia walked over. Xianxia was now asking one by one, not letting go of any possibility. However, until now, no one was willing to say 800 meters or 1,500 meters. Last time, when they ran laps around the field in PE class, many of them were dead tired. They had a rough impression of the 800 meters, so now no one was willing to run it, let alone 1,500 meters. There were many students in this class with good grades, but there weren't many who were good at sports. Xianxia, as the sports committee member, was sullen. Now that class was over, he took the opportunity to ask the last row. Just like before, when the students heard 800 meters, they hesitated. When it came to 1,500 meters, they immediately shook their heads. No one was willing to do it. "Hey, you, did you say 1,500 meters? Xianxia asked Fu Lei, who was looking out the window. Before Xianxia could finish asking, Fu Lei ran out of the classroom. "Who is this guy? He's so arrogant." Xianxia was also angry. It was the first time he was ignored in class. "Him? Fu Lei, I heard that he's good at fighting and always skips classes. He's awesome," Fu Lei said to his deskmate, with a hint of schadenfreude. Although it wasn't said publicly, many people knew that Xianxia's family had a powerful background. When the head teacher talked to Xianxia, his tone was very nice. He didn't sound as serious as he usually was. Xianxia rolled up the list in his hand into a cylinder and knocked it on the table. He snorted and was about to leave. Before he left, he casually glanced out the window and saw a black cat lying on the wall not far away. However, Xianxia didn't think too deeply about it. When he returned to his seat, he said to Jiao Yuan, "I saw a black cat outside the window just now. It looks quite similar to the one in your house." Xianxia said this casually, but Jiao Yuan was different. He knew his cat's ability to walk around. When he was in junior high school, he was still wondering if his cat would walk around here. More than a month had passed and he hadn't seen it. Now that he suddenly heard Xianxia mention it, he quickly asked, "Where did you see it?" Xianxia pointed to the window in the last row. Jiao Yuan didn't go to the last row. There were more people there, and there was no one sitting around the window next to the podium. He walked over and opened the window to look outside. Zheng Tan was leaning on the wall, thinking. Within 2 minutes, he saw Fu Lei running over. The wall was a little high. Fu Lei couldn't climb up or touch it. He just stood there and talked to Zheng Tan. He took out a bag of flavored peanuts and shared it with Zheng Tan. But now Zheng Tan wasn't interested in the flavored peanuts. He just leaned there and listened to Fu Lei complain that he was going to get beaten up when he went back tonight. Black charcoal. While listening to Fu Lei's complaints, Zheng Tan suddenly heard someone call his name. He turned his head and saw Jiao Yuan leaning on the window and looking over. Zheng Tan got up and turned around. He walked along the wall for a distance and faced Jiao Yuan's window. "Damn, it's really him." Maybe Xianxia thought that all black cats looked the same, but Jiao Yuan knew that the cat on the wall was definitely his cat when it turned its head and looked over. When he saw it walking over, he was even more certain. Jiao Yuan turned around and ran out of the classroom. He quickly came back from the other side. However, seeing Fu Lei in a daze, Jiao Yuan was still a little curious, but he didn't ask much. What he was most anxious to ask now was why his cat was here. "Black charcoal, why are you here? Does Dad know? Where's your cat tag? Where did you throw it?" Jiao Yuan asked a series of questions. Fu Lei, who was eating flavored peanuts, looked at Jiao Yuan and then at the cat on the wall. He was surprised. He didn't think that this was Jiao Yuan's cat. No wonder it looked at the front of the classroom through the window. Before Jiao Yuan could say anything, the bell rang. Don't run around. I'll come back after class. After saying that, Jiao Yuan ran back to the classroom. Fu Lei stopped eating and put half a bag of peanuts into his pocket and ran back to the classroom. Jiao Yuan sat in the classroom and looked out of the window from time to time. The teacher on the podium glared at him a few times before he stopped. Fu Lei, who was sitting in the last row, was still absent-minded. He was scribbling on his Chinese textbook. He looked out of the window and saw that the cat was still on the wall. He was confused. Didn't those people all live in Tsinghua University? Why did his cat come all the way to the university? Zheng Tan was sunbathing on the wall and taking a nap until he heard the bell again. He was used to the music in Fushao Elementary School, so the bell sounded a bit harsh. After class, Jiao Yuan ran out and wanted to take Zheng Tan to Jiao Ma, but Zheng Tan didn't move. Jiao Ma's office was on the second floor. Who would bring a cat to the teacher's office? Jiao Yuan also realized what was going on. He said a few words to Zheng Tan and asked him to watch out for a big dog in the school. The dog was owned by the guard. It was nice to students, but it was fierce to other animals. Jiao Yuan talked for another 10 minutes and didn't run back until the bell rang. Zheng Tan didn't want to stay any longer. He was bored. When Jiao Yuan ran back to the classroom, he also walked slowly to Tsinghua University. Fu Lei was sitting by the window. He didn't go out. He was looking out the window. He was envious of Jiao Yuan. His cat came to visit him in class. Zhang Zian was different. His parents were busy and couldn't even take care of him, their only son, let alone a pet. When the third class was over, Jiao Yuan looked out of the window. He didn't see his cat, so he went out again to make sure his cat wasn't there. He went to the last row and asked Fu Lei to talk to him outside. Chapter 120. After exchanging a few words with Fu Lei, Jiao Yuan felt that this person was not bad. He was not as difficult to get along with as others said. Moreover, this person even praised his own cat. Jiao Yuan was very proud of this. At the same time, he also felt that Fu Lei's character was not as bad as others said. After talking about his own cat, Jiao Yuan asked Fu Lei, "I heard that you are very good at fighting?" "No, I just have a lot of fights." Fu Lei knew his own limits. He lost a lot of fights, so he was not considered good at fighting. "Then can you run?" When Jiao Yuan asked this question, Xiong and the others came over because they saw Jiao Yuan and Fu Lei talking outside. They happened to hear this sentence and looked at Fu Lei expectantly. Fu Lei was about to say no, but seeing this situation he paused and replied, "It's okay." After saying this, Fu Lei regretted it. Why run? It was a waste of time. He might as well practice with the punching bag. After hearing Fu Lei's answer, Xiong's dissatisfaction with him disappeared. He came over and opened the name list. He put his hand on Fu Lei's shoulder and said, "Give us 800 meters, we believe in you." "Here, write 800 here." Xiong had been carrying a pen with him. Recently, he had been carrying both the name list and the pen with him. For this sports meet, as a sports committee member, he was doing his best. 800 meters? Fu Lei thought about the approximate length, nodded, took the pen, and wrote 800 behind his name. When Xiong saw the crooked 800, he smiled until his eyes narrowed. "By the way, write 1500 too." Fu Lei. This style of climbing up the pole was really shameless. Ahem, well, it is a bit difficult. Xiong put away the name list, but it was a big gain for today to be able to decide on another 800 meters. After school in the afternoon, Jiao Yuan and the others rode back together. On the way back, they saw Fu Lei and greeted him. However, Fu Lei did not ride his bike. Jiao Yuan and the others did not stay long. They left after a few words. Jiao Yuan told Jiao Pa about his cat as soon as he got back. Jiao Pa's reaction was very calm. His cat often went from here to the pet center, which was further away. However, Jiao Pa was very happy that he knew the place by himself. "But my office is not on the first floor, and I can't let black charcoal in. We have an office there, and all the teachers in the English team are there. It would be bad if someone saw us," Jiao Ma said with some regret. "It's okay. He went for a walk and came back on his own. I haven't heard of anyone catching cats. It should be fine, Jiao Pa said. After lunch, as usual, Jiao Yuan and the others went to the sports field to train. Zheng Tan and little Pomelo went to watch and jogged a few laps. Jiao Yuan and the others did not start jogging immediately. After lunch, they took a break to digest the food and do some warm-up exercises. During the break, they talked about Fu Lei. There were many rumors about Fu Lei, but they had a good impression of Fu Lei today. Jiao Yuan liked him because of his cat, and Xiong because of his 800 meters. Why don't we ask Fu Lei to come over and train with us tomorrow? Lan Tianzhu suggested. Do you have his phone number? We can ask him first. No, I only have a list. Xiong looked at the time on his sports watch and said, It's not even 7. It's still early. Why don't we go find him directly? A few days ago, they went home after 8. There was still more than an hour to go. School had just started, and they did not have much homework. It was not worthwhile to go back so early. Where is Fu Lei's house? Su Wen looked at Xiong. Xiong shrugged. Don't look at me. I don't know either. None of them knew Fu Lei's address, but seeing that Fu Lei did not ride his bike today, they felt that his house should be close. I know how to get to his house. Jiao Yuan jumped down from the parallel bars and called out to the Black Charcoal, who was walking slowly on the track with little Pomelo. Black Charcoal, come here. Zheng Tan, who was walking leisurely with little Pomelo, heard Jiao Yuan calling out to him. He looked at little Pomelo, who had stopped walking, wagged his tail, and walked over unwillingly. These guys were so nosy. Black Charcoal, do you know where Fu Lei's house is? Jiao Yuan asked Zheng Tan. If you do, lead the way. Zheng Tan pulled his ears. Was he trying to stop them? Xiong and the others did not really believe that a cat could lead the way, but after Jiao Yuan said a few words, the cat really did leave. Jiao Yuan quickly carried his bag and followed. Little Pomelo did not want to go back now, so she rode her car and followed Jiao Yuan and the others to the side door. Before leaving the side door, she parked her car in the parking lot near the side door. Hey, Jiao Yuan, does your cat really know the way? Will it lead us to a female cat? Xiong looked around as he walked. It was not completely dark yet, but the street lights were on. There were more people on the street, so he was not afraid. He was just suspicious. Jiao Yuan clicked his tongue, but he wasn't so sure. Zheng Tan led the way in front. After walking for a while, Xiong, who was following behind, began to complain again. Didn't you say that Fu Lei's house is closer? Why aren't we there yet? The others just answered casually, but they were even more suspicious. Zheng Tan did not care what they were thinking. He just needed to lead the way. When they reached the entrance of the alley, Zheng Tan crossed the road and led Jiao Yuan and the others to the old residential area. Nowadays, some old people in the old residential area came out for a walk after dinner. They were surprised to see some unfamiliar children. After asking, Jiao Yuan told them why they were here. Fu Lei? Oh, that guy. He lives on the 4th floor. Let's go that way. The old man raised his hand and pointed at Fu Lei's building. He really lived here. Su Wen and the others looked at each other, and then looked at the cat in front of them. They were all very surprised. Jiao Yuan's cat was really good. No wonder it was the king of the eastern residential area. At this moment, Fu Lei's family had just finished dinner. Fu Lei's parents came back from work late in the afternoon, so they often had dinner late. Fu Lei's mother stood up silently and prepared to clear the table. She looked at her husband and knew that she was going to teach Fu Lei a lesson today. She hated it when people interrupted. Fu Lei ate 3 bowls of rice. Every time he was beaten, he would eat more before he was beaten. He felt that eating more would help him recover faster. Come here. Fu Lei's father pulled a long face and walked directly to Fu Lei's room. Fu Lei lowered his head and followed him slowly. Fu Lei's father dragged a chair over and sat down. He looked at Fu Lei standing in front of him and raised his hand to hit him. He scolded, "You mother****. As soon as he said those words, someone knocked on the door. Fu Lei's father didn't want others to see him scolding his son. Although he was uneducated, he knew that he shouldn't wash his dirty linen in public. He had to maintain his image. But when he was about to lose his temper, he was interrupted. Fu Lei's father's face darkened and he sat there motionlessly. Fu Lei's mother sighed softly. She put down the dishes she was about to wash, shook the water off her hands, and walked over to open the door. As soon as she opened the door, she saw a few children who were the same age as her son and a little girl who was even younger. Fu Lei's mother was a little surprised. She thought it was a neighbor who came to borrow something. She didn't expect this to happen. "Excuse me, is this Fu Lei's house?" Jiao Yuan asked. Yes, may I ask who you are?" Fu Lei's mother hurriedly said. She was worried that her son had caused trouble at school again. The children in front of her didn't look like those hooligans. Jing Tan didn't care so much and directly walked in. As soon as he entered, he saw the father and son in the small room. Were they about to start a fight? It seemed that he had come just in time. Fu Lei was like his father. When he saw the few people who came in, he was a little dumbfounded. He really didn't expect Jiao Yuan and the others to come. He looked to the side and saw the black cat jumping on a stool and squatting there. It looked like it was ready to watch a show. Cough. Who are these people? When Fu Lei's father saw the few children, he couldn't put on a serious face. He forced a smile and patted Fu Lei's head and asked. Like Fu Lei's mother, Fu Lei's father was also wondering if his son had hit someone again. He calculated the money. This month's salary had just been paid. If it was just a normal compensation, he could still handle it. "Hello, we are in the same class as Fu Lei. We are here to look for Fu Lei because of the sports meet." Xiong stepped forward and said. At the same time, he opened the name list in his hand and pointed to Fu Lei's signature. Fu Lei was looking at the black cat on the stool. He was a little dazed after being slapped by his father. When he heard Xiong's words, he was even more puzzled. Why would they come looking for him because of the sports meet? But it also saved him from domestic violence. After Fu Lei's mother heard the explanation of the few children, she quickly found a few chairs for them to sit down. She took out some snacks from the cabinet and placed 2 big jelly in front of little Pomelo. This was the first time that their house had such visitors. There were even class committee members among them. Fu Lei's father thought more and also asked around. When he found out that these few people lived in Tsinghua University, the smile on his face widened and he looked very amiable. Fu Lei, who was standing next to him, saw his father smile like this for the first time in years. He didn't even know that his father could smile like this. Fu Lei's mother was a little embarrassed. She knew that these few children came from good families. Their fathers were all highly educated people. She was afraid that these children would look down on her family. But after careful observation, she found that this wasn't the case. These few children didn't have any contempt in their eyes. Other than being a little restrained when they first came in, they were very natural after that. Zheng Tan knew the reason for this. Actually, the teachers living in Tsinghua University's eastern courtyard, especially those retired teachers, lived very poor lives. Xiong's grandparents were more simple. Although they weren't as poor as Fu Lei's family, to Xiong and the others, it was nothing. They didn't look down on them. Moreover, although these few children were sometimes a little arrogant because of their talents, they were still well educated. They knew some basic manners. Zheng Tan understood them. Then our class 800-meter run will depend on him. Xiong pointed at Fu Lei and said. Fu Lei's father waved his hand and said, "It's okay. Let him do the 81,000-meter run. This kid is only good for this." Fu Lei. Was there anyone who would criticize their own son like this? Xiong didn't pay attention to the second half of the sentence because he caught a keyword in the first half. He immediately took out the name list and placed it on the table. He passed a pen to Fu Lei and said, "Your dad said that you can do even 1,500. Come on, our class will depend on you." Fu Lei was a little hesitant. He really didn't want to do something that would cause him to lose out. But his father had already slapped him. "What are you standing there for? Don't you know what is the class's honor? Group, do you understand? If you have the ability, then you have to contribute more to the group." Fu Lei's father stared at Fu Lei and said. Fu Lei curled his lips. He was very disdainful of his father's old-fashioned way of thinking. But he still took the pen and signed 1,500 meters on the name list. This trip was not in vain. Xiong now felt comfortable all over. He suddenly felt that life was still beautiful and tomorrow was still bright. After talking to Fu Lei's father, Xianxia and the rest went to Fu Lei's room. F***C, Fu Lei, your room is even messier than mine. Xianxia sighed as he looked at the messy room. At the same time, he felt that Fu Lei was indeed a kindred spirit. Why would a man need to tidy up his room so cleanly? Anyway, no one was looking. Xianxia directly said it, but it didn't make people feel awkward. It was better than pretending not to care. But Fu Lei's parents who were in the living room blushed when they heard it. How embarrassing! The children all went to Fu Lei's small room. Only Zheng Tan was squatting on the stool in the living room. Hey, why do you think these children brought a cat here? Fu Lei's father looked at the black cat that was calmly squatting on the stool and asked Fu Lei's mother in a low voice. They probably brought it out for a walk? Fu Lei's mother said uncertainly. TSK, an intellectual's cat is indeed different. Fu Lei's father was about to light a cigarette, but when he thought of the children in the room, he held back. They couldn't go out for a walk now. The couple sat in the living room, thinking about something. Bored, Fu Lei's father took out a fish head from the fridge and put it in front of Zheng Tan. Zheng Tan. They were indeed father and son. Just like before, Zheng Tan glanced at it and ignored it. He changed to another stool and continued squatting there. An intellectual's cat is indeed different. This is called food that is not given out for free, right? Fu Lei's father continued to stare at Zheng Tan. Zheng Tan was annoyed by his father's stare. He jumped off the stool and walked into the room. In the room, Xianxia and the others were listening to Fu Lei's bragging. Xianxia was especially envious of him learning martial arts when he was young. After staying there for half an hour, Jiao Yuan suggested that they leave. They would be scolded if they went back too late. It's too late today. We have to go home. We'll come back next time if we have the chance, Jiao Yuan said. Okay, there are still some things that we can talk about at school tomorrow. All right, tomorrow afternoon after dinner, you can go to Tsinghua University's sports field with us to exercise. Xianxia was still talking to Fu Lei. Zheng Tan was already squatting at the door. He was a little impatient. Looking at the sky outside, it was already dark. He didn't know how the security here was. Since it wasn't too late and there were still some pedestrians on the road, he should hurry back. He didn't want to run into those gangsters who wanted to rob him. Fu Lei was good at fighting, but these guys were not good at fighting. They even had 2 girls with them. Fu Lei's father took his jacket. It's late now. I'll send you guys back. We don't want to run into those gangsters outside. Anyway, this place is not far from Tsinghua University. His words made Zheng Tan feel relieved. With such a strong martial artist around, the kids would definitely be fine. Fu Lei didn't want to stay at home, so he sent Jiao Yuan and the others to Tsinghua University with his father. On the way, he saw the black cat following beside them. He even asked Jiao Yuan a few questions about cats. When it came to talking about his cat, Jiao Yuan became more talkative and talked a lot. They talked and laughed and felt that time passed quickly. Soon, they were standing at the side door. Little Pomelo went over to push the car out. Zheng Tan jumped into the basket. As for Jiao Yuan and the others, they followed little Pomelo's car and ran back to the east side courtyard. On the other side, Fu Lei's father was sending them to Tsinghua University's side door. He looked at the kids and the words on the side door. He patted the back of Fu Lei's head and said, "Remember to get along well with them. It's good for you." Fu Lei didn't say a word. Did you hear that? Fu Lei's father patted him again. I heard that patting the back of the head can easily make people stupid, Fu Lei said. You little brat. Fu Lei's father was about to slap Fu Lei's head again. He thought about it and stopped. He patted Fu Lei's shoulder instead. Many people who didn't go to university had a strong desire to go to university. Just like Fu Lei's father, when they stood at the entrance of the university, the feelings that had been buried deep in their hearts for decades seemed to break through the soil. They didn't have a chance to go to university in this lifetime, so they hoped that their children would be able to go to such a university. No matter how high his expectations were, in his heart, he didn't expect Fu Lei to go to a good university, let alone Tsinghua University. In fact, as long as it was a university, he would be satisfied. The next day, after school, Fu Lei and Jiao Yuan agreed to go to Chuhua University's sports field for training after dinner. There were only 2 days left until the sports meet on Friday and Saturday. They had to hurry. After eating at home, Fu Lei wiped his mouth and took his school bag. He was ready to go out. Fu Lei's father followed him. If the training was too late at night, he would come back with his son. On the other hand, Fu Lei's father also wanted to walk around this famous university in the country. He didn't have many opportunities to go to work. Jiao Yuan and Xianxia had told them the location of the sports field. The father and son were prepared to ask around if they couldn't find the place. However, they didn't expect to see Jiao Yuan's black cat squatting on a staircase when they entered the side door. After seeing Fu Lei and his son, Jing Tan came down from the staircase and stretched. He brought the two of them to the sports field. He specially came to pick them up. There were many roads in Chuhua University, and there were several sports fields. Even some students from Chuhua University might not be able to tell which was which. Therefore, Jing Tan came here early to wait for them. He didn't want the two of them to walk around randomly and waste time. "Your classmate's cat is very good," Fu Lei's father said to Fu Lei as he looked at the cat leading the way. Chapter 121. When Jing Tan brought Fu Lei and his son over, Jiao Yuan and the others were warming up. Some people who played soccer or jogged around were already familiar with these kids. Some even came over to greet them and talk about the past again. After bringing them over, Jing Tan jumped onto the steps and lay down beside little Pomelo, ready to watch them train. In addition to the long-distance running, Jiao Yuan and the others also wanted to see how well the sprints worked. The finale of the sports meet, the 4x100-meter relay, was an important event. In addition to cooperation, they also needed to determine the first, second, and third runners, as well as the last sprinter. Xianxia called Fu Lei over to discuss. Fu Lei's father was next to them, sitting at the bottom of the steps. He looked at the kids and sometimes looked at the scenery around the sports field. Jing Tan looked at him and guessed that he was thinking about something again. Jiao Yuan and the others ran 2 laps with Fu Lei and then stopped. Fu Lei then started his 3rd lap. It seemed that he could still run a few more laps. Fu Lei's father was next to them, looking at Fu Lei on the track with a smile. Even though he usually beat up Fu Lei, he was quite proud of his son. At least his son had some merits, right? Fu Lei ran 4 laps before he stopped. Although he looked very tired, Jing Tan felt that he could still continue. It was just his first time running today, so he needed to conserve some energy. Seeing Fu Lei slowly walking over, Xianxia and the others surrounded him and handed him water and towels. Fu Lei's father, who was sitting next to them, was laughing so hard that his eyes disappeared. On Thursday night, they had another training session, focusing on the relay. Some kids from nearby came over. Jiao Yuan, Lan Tianzhu, and Fu Lei made up a 4-person relay. The fastest runner was still Fu Lei. Xianxia let Fu Lei be the last runner. As for Xianxia, he could not run by himself. He was only strong, so he could throw the shot put. On Friday morning, after Jiao Yuan and Jiao Ma left, little Pomelo reluctantly went to school. Today, there was an 800 yuan and 1,500 yuan competition. It was a pity that she could not watch it. Jing Tan watched little Pomelo enter the school and then rushed to Jiao Yuan's school. This time, he did not take a stroll on the fence. Instead, he was jogging. There was a big tabby cat lying on the fence. It must have just come out to look for food. It was squatting there with its head down, licking its paws and wiping its face. Suddenly, its ears twitched, and it looked at the other side of the wall in shock. Just as it looked over, a black shadow jumped over its head. Its gaze followed the jumping figure. It raised its head, turned its head, and then looked back at the black shadow that had landed on the wall and continued to run away. After a few seconds, the cat remembered that it had not finished licking its paws and turned its head to continue licking. When he was almost at Jiao Yuan's school, Jing Tan sped up. In front of him, there was a big cat that had just jumped on the fence. It was yawning. Jing Tan did not slow down. He rushed over and jumped again. The yawning big cat was about to stretch when it was scared by Jing Tan's action. It slipped and almost fell off the fence. After it climbed back up the fence, it looked at the black shadow that was running away. It raised its hind legs and scratched its ears. It shook its head and looked at the passing crowd to amuse itself. The people on the street were in a hurry. No one paid attention to the black cat running on the fence. Maybe they were used to seeing cats on the fence. It did not matter if it was a white cat or a black cat. There was nothing to be concerned about. In this area, people and cats always maintained their own pace of life and did not interfere with each other. When Zheng Tan arrived at the field of Jiao Yuan's school, the opening ceremony was in progress. He looked around and saw many square formations in school uniforms on the field. After looking around, Zheng Tan did not find any tall trees or a suitable place to watch the sports meet. Finally, Zheng Tan's gaze fell on the wall behind the commander's desk. A huge poster was pasted on the wall, and a banner hung at the top of it. Zheng Tan walked over from the stairs and looked at the wall from the side. Although the wall was not very thick, it was wide enough for him to squat there and watch the situation on the field. At this time, the leader on the commander's desk was talking. The so-called simple explanation had been going on for 20 minutes. Many students in the square formation below were impatient. They whispered to each other and were glared at by the head teacher. After a while, they began to whisper again. Zheng Tan could feel their resentment even though he was far away. But soon, some students noticed the black cat approaching the commander's desk. They stopped whispering and stared at the black cat. It was much more interesting than listening to the leader's speech. Jiao Yuan was originally chatting with Suan, who was standing next to him, using a secret signal that only they knew. Suddenly, Fu Lei, who was standing behind him, poked him and pointed his chin forward. "Look at the commander's desk." Hearing Fu Lei's words, Jiao Yuan was still wondering what was going on. When he looked over, he saw his cat standing on the top step and striding towards the commander's desk with its head held high. Suan and the others also saw this scene. There were many black cats in the city, but when they saw the cat, they were sure that it was Jiao Yuan's cat. Other than his cat, no other cat would be so bold as to calmly run towards the commander's desk in front of so many people. Jiao Yuan's eyes twitched. He had heard about the military training from Jiao Wei. His cat must have found a good place to observe. He just didn't know if it would cause any awkward effects. Zheng Tan didn't care what others thought. After arriving at the commander's desk, it jumped directly onto the wall. The banner hanging on the wall was slightly higher than the top of the wall. Zheng Tan squatted behind it. The people outside could only see a black cat's head. The leader standing on the commander's desk didn't notice at all. He was still talking. On the sports field, friendship comes first, competition comes second. Zheng Tan yawned. Who would believe such nonsense? Without friendship, competition came first. What friendship did people who didn't know each other talk about friendship? Many people said that yawning was contagious. Therefore, the students, who had been overly excited yesterday and were feeling sleepy after listening to the boring speech of the station leader, suddenly felt even more sleepy after seeing Zheng Tan yawn twice in a row. Zheng Tan tugged at the red banner in front of her out of boredom. She looked at the bald head of the leader who was speaking. Was this because he was tired? When the leader finally finished his speech and announced the start of the sports meet, the group of people let out a sigh of relief. The leader was still sitting there. There was a row of people sitting on the commander's desk. They were the judges for the first event. Zheng Tan didn't expect the first event to be broadcast gymnastics. Only the first-year students had this event. The second and third-year students didn't have it. There were more than 10 classes in the first year. They weren't arranged according to class number. It was completely based on drawing lots. It was fairer this way. No one complained about when to appear. It was all based on luck. Jiao Yuan's class was in 4th place. It wasn't bad. The second and third years had already left. Some of them were watching from the side. The athletes were doing some warm-ups. At the same time, they were watching the first years do the silly things they had experienced in the past. Many people felt that when they were doing the broadcast gymnastics seriously, they looked especially silly. Zheng Tan leaned against the background wall and peeked his head out to look down. Many people tried their best to do every movement well under the eyes of the school leaders. Moreover, it was a competition. However, if they overdid it, they would appear a little stiff. Coupled with their serious and childish faces, Zheng Tan really wanted to laugh. However, Zheng Tan wanted to see the performance of Jiao Yuan's class. When the third class came over, the fourth class was preparing and waiting at the side. Xianxia was standing in front of the group. From what Zheng Tan saw just now, the ones standing in front of the group were the leaders. They didn't have to be the sports committee members. Moreover, the leaders in front of them were all beautiful girls. Suddenly, there was a beast in this class. When it was finally Jiao Yuan's class, Zheng Tan felt that Jiao Yuan and the others were already a little stiff. Just as Zheng Tan thought, Jiao Yuan felt uncomfortable when he saw his cat watching him. Why did he feel like his cat was waiting to see him make a fool of himself? Jiao Yuan finally understood how Jiao Wei felt during the freshman military training at Tsinghua University. In fact, Jiao Yuan should be glad that there was only Zheng Tan this time. No other cats came. The music started. Xianxia, the fat and strong guy, was wearing a school uniform and white gloves. He stood in front of the group and led the exercises seriously. Although it looked a little weird, and people who didn't know better would definitely think that this was a mistake on the head teacher's part, this just happened to be the smart part of their head teacher. Actually, letting Xianxia lead the drill also had the effect of showing his face. Many people sitting on the command platform knew Xianxia. Before school started, Xianxia's mother had already met these leaders and teachers. The leader sitting in the center looked at Xianxia with a smile on his face. He looked very friendly. The leader of the class who just walked over didn't have this kind of treatment. Unfortunately, Xianxia didn't pay attention to the school leader at all. It was rare for him to have a straight face. Zheng Tan still wanted to laugh. Each class only had about 5 minutes. After an hour, they finished. Jiao Yuan's class was in first place, slightly ahead of the second place. The teacher of the first class had a smile on his face. Zheng Tan felt that the smile had a deeper meaning. Sure enough, the head teacher was not a simple character. After the broadcast exercise, the official competition began. The first morning was the 100m and 1,500-meter sprint. Jiao Yuan wasn't competing. Xianxia hoped that Fu Lei could run the 100-meter sprint. Unfortunately, each person could only sign up for 2 events, so he had to give up on the 100-meter sprint. Fortunately, the person who signed up for the 100-meter sprint was good. Even if he wasn't outstanding, the head teacher wanted him to try his best to be in the top 8. Because only the top 8 would be counted. The points for the first to 8th place were 9, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1 respectively. The last event was the relay event, and double points were counted. There were preliminaries for the 100-meter sprint, but the 1,500-meter sprint was decided directly. Fu Lei had a number tag hanging behind his back. He was warming up. After the heats of the 100-meter sprint, his 1,500-meter sprint would begin. There were only a few people around Fu Lei, including Jiao Yuan. The others were either watching the heats of the 100-meter sprint, sitting in their own class area, writing encouraging notes, or reading books. The leaders on the podium had already left. Sitting there were people from the school radio station, as well as some students who wanted to cheer for their class athletes through the microphone. A few students wanted to poke Zheng Tan, but the wall was too high for them to reach. They could only throw paper balls. When Zheng Tan was bored, he played a paper ball game with a few girls. When Jiao went to Jiao Yuan with a bag of water, she pointed at the cat playing with a few girls on the podium and said, "Jiao Yuan, why is our black charcoal there?" Chapter 122. After the 100m heats, it was time for the 1,500-meter sprint. Everyone in Grade 1 Class 1 knew that the only person in their class who ran the 1,500-meter sprint was Fu Lei, the bad student who was rumored to be very good at fighting and always skipping classes. In fact, many people were not very enthusiastic about cheering for Qingguan. It was just that there was only the 1,500-meter sprint in the morning and the 100-meter sprint final after that. Some people who had just finished watching the 100-meter sprint heats were sitting by the side leisurely eating melon seeds. They were talking about what they had seen and gossiping about which class had indeed gotten first place. Only Jiao Yuan, Xianxia, and a few others accompanied Fu Lei to the 1,500-meter sprint starting point. Fu Lei himself did not care if other people came to cheer for him or not. After all, they were all unimportant people. Zheng Tan was lying on his side against the background wall. His head was casually resting on the edge of the wall. He was looking at the world that had rotated 90 degrees. Occasionally, his ears would twitch because of the wind that blew past. The 1,500-meter sprint had just begun. Fu Lei and the other classes were closer together. More than 10 people were running in a line around the track. Fu Lei was in the middle and at the back. But Jing Tan could tell from his expression that he was not nervous at all. During the first lap, there were not many people cheering for Qingguan. Only a few shouts could be heard once in a while. But slowly, during the second and third laps, the gap between the 10 people was getting bigger and bigger. Some people in the class were getting anxious. During the third lap, some people automatically quit. But the others, even if they were at the back, were running very slowly and still persisting. Fu Lei was in 5th place. The first 5 people were closer together. Some people in Class 1 were excited. Even if they were in 5th place, the class would get an extra 4 points. During the 4th lap, the cheers got louder. The school track was more than 300 meters. The 1,500-meter sprint took more than 4 laps. Many people liked to speed up during the last lap. The first 2 people had already started to speed up. The people behind were not willing to fall behind, except for Fu Lei. Seeing that Fu Lei was about to be overtaken by the 6th person, the students of Class 1 were anxious. The students who were eating melon seeds couldn't sit still. They squeezed to the side of the track and shouted encouragement with the rest of the class. Jing Tan looked at Jiao Yuan and the others. They looked more anxious than anyone else. Their faces were red, but they did not make a sound. It was only when Fu Lei started to speed up that the few of them who had been holding back for a long time began to shout. They wished they could take his place. The finish line had been pulled up. Fu Lei's speed was getting faster and faster. The 4th and 3rd place also felt the pressure, but their legs were not listening to them. They were almost at their limit. Starting from Jiao Yuan's side, Class 1 students started cheering for Fu Lei. Litmus ran directly to the commander's desk and snatched the microphone from the announcer's hand. She cheered along with Jiao Yuan's rhythm. The announcer sitting there glared at her, but she ignored it. There were also some 2nd and 3rd graders who wanted to join in the fun shouting. After shouting a few times, they asked the 1st graders next to them, "Who is Fu Lei?" The bespectacled student from an unknown class adjusted his glasses and said, based on their shouting, "It's either the first 2 or the person behind who is rushing forward like he's on steroids." For the first time, Fu Lei felt a strong sense of existence. He heard those people shouting, "Fu Lei, go!" This seemed to be the first time Fu Lei's name had been shouted by so many people in such a big occasion. They no longer looked at him with alienation and disdain. They no longer looked at him as if he was a weak student. At this moment, he was the hope of the entire class. What was a collective sense of honor? In the past, Fu Lei had always been disdainful of it. But now, he seemed to understand. There was no need to deliberately do anything or express anything. When something happened, when the situation matured, this kind of feeling naturally and uncontrollably arose. What was originally a symbolic thing became a real thing. All of his emotions found a strong point of support. It ignited the long-lost passion for fighting for first place. It was as if he had returned to that small village and fought for a wooden carving trophy. But this time, it was even more intense. Jing Tan watched as Fu Lei increased his speed and quickly closed in on the 2nd place. He then overtook and continued to close in on the person in the front. This kid really hid his strength well. Jing Tan heard from Jiao Yuan that among the 1st graders in the 1,500-meter sprint, there were 2 who had joined the school's sports department. They should be the 2 who were running at the front. The cheers of Class 1 grew louder and louder. They couldn't control their own emotions. Some of the other people who were wandering around were also pulled over by the shouts and joined the army of cheers. Just now, an announcer on the command deck wanted to snatch the microphone from Litmus's hand. Litmus leaned to the side and avoided that person's hand. She continued to hold the microphone and shouted. Some of the people from other classes around the field didn't know and thought that the school radio station was biased. In fact, the announcers sitting there also had a belly full of bitterness. Seeing the contestant from Class 1 start to rush for first place, they didn't try to snatch the microphone anymore. At this time, it was impossible to snatch it. This little girl was too strong. Zheng Tan glanced at the situation on the platform and felt happy in his heart. Then, he turned his attention back to Fu Lei, who was sprinting in the last 50 meters. The student who had maintained first place until now was worthy of being called a sports student. His sprinting speed didn't seem like it was for the 1,500-meter sprint at all. However, Fu Lei was a dark horse. In the end, he took the lead by 2 steps and won first place. Although he didn't break the record, getting first place was already a big surprise for Class 1. They cheered for a long time. The event that they didn't have much hope for had become the most unexpected surprise. Zheng Tan looked at Fu Lei, who was being supported by Jiao Yuan and the other students of Class 1 as they left the track. He slowly swayed his tail. What was this called? A good start? The first drop of blood? This was the first official first place until now. The 1,500-meter sprint preliminaries were settled. For the first time, Class 1's head teacher looked at Fu Lei with a peaceful gaze and even a smile. This made Fu Lei have goosebumps. He felt that the serious head teacher was more normal. After the 1,500-meter sprint, the final of the 100-meter sprint also began. Those who got a good ranking were like heroes who returned in triumph, enjoying the crowd's applause and support. Those who didn't get into the top 8 silently squeezed into the mixed crowd and left the field in low spirits. After watching the competition in the morning, Zheng Tan got up and prepared to go back. He still had to go back to Tsinghua University at noon to accompany little Pomelo. He would come back in the afternoon. Poor Fu Lei, there were still 800 meters left in the afternoon. It would be tough for him. Other than Fu Lei's race, there were also Xiong's shot put, Lan Tianzhu's long jump, etc. There were many events in the afternoon, but Zheng Tan was only interested in Xiong's and the others. After watching her cat jump onto the wall and leave, Jiaoma came back to take Jiao Yuan and the others to the staff cafeteria for lunch. She also took Fu Lei with her. When Zheng Tan came in the afternoon, the competition had already started. It was the same place. Zheng Tan jumped onto the background wall, stretched, and lay there, overlooking the entire field. There was no need to worry about people blocking his view. He could even see some of the long jump athletes. Xiong was second in the shot put, just a little bit behind the first place. He was very depressed because of this. For half a day, except when he was cheering for Jiao Yuan and the others, he kept a straight face. Su In and Lan Tianzhu also participated in the high jump and long jump. Although they weren't in the top 3, Zheng Tan heard from the announcer that one of them was 4th in the high jump and the other was 5th in the long jump. As for Fu Lei's 800-meter sprint, many students came to talk to him before Fu Lei ran the 800-meter sprint in the afternoon. They told him to do his best and not to be too stressed. After all, the 1,500-meter sprint in the morning was already tough enough, and he still had to run the 800-meter sprint in the afternoon. The 800-meter sprint was much shorter than the 1,500-meter sprint. Maybe because he was too tired in the morning competition, he only got 3rd place. But the 3rd place was enough to make the students of Class 1 happy. At least they could get a lot of points. Now, Class 1's total score was in 1st place. After watching the sports meet for a while, Zheng Tan got up and left. He didn't wait for Jiao Yuan and Jiao Ma. Jiao Yuan and the other boys would stay at school for a while. In the evening, Jiao Yuan went home and briefly told little Pomelo about today's competition. Then he went to bed early. He still had to run the 400-meter sprint and the relay tomorrow. The whole family went out for the next day's competition. Jiao Pa and little Pomelo also came to Jiao Yuan's school to watch the competition. Today was Saturday, so they had a rest. After arriving at the sports field, Zheng Tan didn't go to the commander's desk this time. Instead, he followed Jiao Pa and the others to watch the competition on a platform. Xiong's parents also came, along with a few other parents in the family courtyard. They all stood together and watched the competition. Sometimes, they would chat with other parents they knew. In the morning, Jiao Yuan got 2nd place in the heats of the 400-meter sprint. He was qualified to participate in the final in the afternoon. At noon, a large group of people didn't go to the teacher's cafeteria. Xiong's mother treated them to a relatively high-end restaurant outside. There weren't any high-end hotels nearby, so they had to make do with it. Fu Lei's parents didn't come, but they brought them with them. During lunch, the kids got together to discuss the relay in the afternoon and change their original strategy. Before they left, they looked at the positions of the runners of the 4x100-meter relay and estimated the distance of the fourth leg. They weren't sure if it was a mistake by the school, but the second leg was longer. They should let the fastest runner close the gap to save time. Therefore, Fu Lei, who was supposed to be the last runner, became the second runner. Jiao Yuan, who was the second fastest, was in charge of sprinting. In the afternoon, Jiao Yuan got third place in the 400 meters sprint final. He was very satisfied with this result. He got second place in the heats and fifth place in the overall competition. He didn't expect to get better in the final. When the other events were about to end, it meant that the last and most important event was about to begin. Now, the boys' team of Class 1 was in second place, while the girls' team was in first place. They were several points ahead of the second-place team. If nothing unexpected happened, the girls' team would also get a good result. In the end, the girls' team would be in first place. Therefore, the students of Class 1 all hoped that the boys' team could get a good result. That way, Class 1 would get 2 first places. How cool would that be? Just thinking about it made them excited. Even the stingy homeroom teacher said that if the boys' team came in first, he would pay 300 yuan to buy basketball and other sports equipment for them. Zheng Tan stood on Jiao Pa's shoulder and looked at the runners on the track. Just as Jiao Yuan and the others had said, Fu Lei was also very good at sprinting. When he was the second runner, he was already ahead of the rest of the runners. Some of the other classes dropped their runners midway, and some made mistakes. No matter what, they were all trying their best. At this time, the sun had begun to cool down, but the track was white-hot. A gust of wind blew. Zheng Tan squinted as he looked at the track in the sunlight. These 2 days might not be a big deal to others. They were just 2 days of ordinary sports for junior high school students. However, Zheng Tan had a different feeling from the bottom of his heart. In these 2 days, there were no bad students or good students on this track. The 2 people who had quarreled over a pen the day before yesterday had carried each other to the infirmary without hesitation. The 2 people who had always been clear about boundaries were now cheering for each other at the top of their lungs. Zheng Tan thought back to his experience at this age. His memory was very faint and blurry. He did not seem to have any special impressions. There was also a sports meet back then. However, Zheng Tan seemed to have jumped over the school wall with a few bad friends and went to the arcade. At that time, Zheng Tan thought that it was just a sports meet. There was nothing to participate in and there was nothing to see. There was a sports meet every year, and there was nothing to pay attention to. What was the point of fighting like an idiot, crying, laughing, and making a fuss over a worthless ranking? When he went to high school and university, who would remember these little junior high school sports meet? However, after these 2 days, Zheng Tan felt that some of the things that he thought were boring back then were no longer boring. Zheng Tan saw Fu Lei wiping his tears when Jiao Yuan and the others helped him back to the rest area after the long run. He also saw Xiong almost hitting the referee when he threw the shot put for the first time. There was also a long jumper whose pants slipped when he jumped into the sandpit. How much did he miss in the past? Zheng Tan looked at his hairy paws and then looked at Jiao Yuan, who had already started sprinting. The students of Class 1 were ready to welcome the joy of the double championship. If he could do it all over again, Zheng Tan could only be a bystander, watching the figures running, jumping, shouting, and sweating under the sun. Zheng Tan suddenly envied Jiao Yuan and the others. In this era, the children of this age were not so introverted. They did not think too far ahead. With pure and immature emotions, they only fought for the moment. They only persisted for the moment. They walked through the turning point from elementary school to high school, showing their joy, anger, sorrow, and joy. Perhaps in the future, the fiercer and crueler competition and the reality of survival would make them become Philistine, and they would learn to wear masks for a long time. However, when they occasionally calmed down or when they got off work, they would carry their bags and drag their tired bodies. When they passed by an elementary school or high school, they would look at the lively and immature figures and remember the pure, hard days of the past. A person's life was decades long, and their memories were limited. Too much time would be lost in their memories. However, the shining moments that had always existed, regardless of whether they were bright or dark, could be taken out and looked at in their free time. Every single one of them would make them reminisce for a long time. Zheng Tan's forehead was patted. He came back to his senses and saw Jiao Pa looking at him. Black charcoal, get ready to go home. Taking a deep breath, Zheng Tan stretched his back and squinted his eyes as he yawned. Chapter 123. The joy of Jiao Yuan's class winning the sports meets double championship continued. The few children prepared to celebrate. They did not go to any big hotel, but to Jiao Wei's family's restaurant. Xiong missed the fried rice meat there. Jiao Yuan, Litmus, Fu Lei, and a few other kids agreed to go to Jiao Wei's restaurant together later. The parents didn't want to restrict them, so those who had something to do had already left. Jiao Pa said that he would bring the kids there later, so there was no need for all the adults to come along. Before leaving school, Xiong went to the bathroom. Eating, drinking, and going to the toilet was a big thing. Jiao Yuan and the others, who were carrying their backpacks, walked slowly to the school gate and waited for Xiong outside. Zheng Tan squatted on the wall of the school gate, watching the students walk out in 2s and 3s. Some of them were still talking about what had happened today, and some of them looked depressed. Jiao Yuan and the others were talking about how to spend the hundreds of yuan that they had won. The money was included in the class fee, so they couldn't afford to pay for a meal. Therefore, even if they wanted to buy something, they could only buy some basketball or football. Buy some badminton rackets, but they don't have to be the best. Just make do with them, Litmus interrupted. Girls didn't play basketball or football. At most, they played volleyball and badminton. A few teachers walked out of the door and greeted Jiao Ma. They probably knew Jiao Pa, and were about to leave after a few words. However, when they saw Zheng Tan squatting on the wall, they pointed at him and asked Jiao Ma, "Is this your cat?" "Yes, he came to watch the sports meet with us," Jiao Ma said. "Oh, that's good." After that, the teacher left with the others. However, Jiao Pa felt that the "ha" in the teacher's words seemed to have a deeper meaning. Confused, Jiao Pa asked Jiao Ma. Jiao Ma told him some things that happened during the opening ceremony. Jiao Pa was silent. No wonder those people said, "Haha." Whose cat could jump onto the wall of the stage and watch the sports meet in front of so many people? While they were talking, Xiong ran out. Jiao Pa gave him his school bag and 2 bottles of drinks left by Xiong's mother. "Let's go, kids," Jiao Pa said to them, and they all went to Jiao Wei's restaurant together. Those who had bicycles rode them. Those who didn't have bicycles, like Fu Lei, let other people carry them. Jiao Ma rode with them. Jiao Pa didn't drive today. There were many people and cars in the area, so it was very crowded. There was no parking space, so he rode an electric scooter. Jiao Pa rode the electric scooter, and little Pomelo sat behind him. As for Zheng Tan, he continued to squat in the basket of the electric scooter. He adjusted himself to a more comfortable position, put his chin on the edge of the basket, and looked at the scenery passing by. "Hey, Jiao Yuan, your cat is so obedient. I have a cat at home too. When I put it in the basket, it's like confinement. It won't stay in the basket for even a moment. Even if it stays in the basket for a while, it will jump out when the cart starts moving. So every time I take it for injections, it's in a cage. By the way, what brand of cat food does your cat eat?" "It looks very strong," one of Jiao Yuan's classmates said. He was also one of the people who had participated in the relay race. "My cat is a bit special. It doesn't eat cat food. It eats the same food as us. It doesn't eat the food that we don't eat either." Jiao Yuan paused, then continued, "It doesn't eat food given by strangers either." However, Jiao Yuan was obviously not sure about the latter part of his sentence. He had never seen his cat eat food given by strangers. Fu Lei had a deep understanding of this. "It didn't eat the fish head I gave it last time. Does your cat like to catch mice?" that classmate continued to ask. Of course, they chatted along the way from whose cat is the best to how to not get splashed by the water when taking a dump, which was a topic that spanned a wide range of topics. Fortunately, it wasn't too far away. Soon, they arrived at Jiao Wei's restaurant. Jiao Pa's phone had run out of battery, so he used Jiao Ma's phone to call the restaurant. Jiao Wei's father waved his hand and said, "Okay, Let them all come in. When they arrived, they found out that Jiao Wei's father had hung a closed sign in front of the restaurant to entertain the kids. Jiao Wei had already told his parents about this sanitary fee. He just ignored the special factor of Zheng Tan and attributed the main reason to Jiao Pa and Celestine. His parents were very grateful and had been thinking about how to thank him. After receiving the phone call today, they decided to close the restaurant and entertain the kids. Where's Wei Wei? Jiao Pa looked around and asked. Jiao Wei's mother had just finished washing the vegetables. She wiped her hands on her apron and said, "He joined some club. I don't know what he's been busy with recently. I heard that he stayed up late last night and only went to bed after 10 this morning. I think he's still in the dormitory now. He said that he'll come over later. He should be up now." Zheng Tan was lying on a chair in the restaurant. Litmus, little Pomelo, and Jiao Ma were playing cards next to him. Jiao Yuan and the other kids were either standing or leaning against their bicycles, chatting happily outside. Even Fu Lei, who usually didn't talk much, was gradually getting into the conversation. Zheng Tan pricked up his ears and listened. Soon he lost interest. The kids' conversation was boring. He would rather watch little Pomelo and the others play cards. Jiao Pa chatted with Jiao Wei's parents for a while. Then he came to the table and said to Jiao Ma, "I think we'll have to wait for another 10 minutes. I'll go back to get the charger first. My phone is out of battery. I have to send the kids back tonight. I'm afraid that UNZ won't be able to contact me again if something urgent happens." Jiao Ma looked at the cards in her hand and nodded, indicating that she understood. Zheng Tan thought for a while and jumped off the chair. He followed Jiao Pa out. It was boring to sit here, so it was better to go out for a walk. Jiao Pa rode the electric scooter and led Zheng Tan into the eastern courtyard. Zheng Tan heard that cheap voice. There was a person standing under a tree not far from the building. Zheng Tan knew this person. Not long after he was kidnapped, Jiao Ma took him to the affiliated hospital community. This person lived there. He seemed to be called by Yang or something. He was also the talent that Jiao Pa and Yuan Zi wanted to poach. Later, they succeeded in hiring him with a high salary. Zheng Tan didn't know the details. He hadn't seen this person for a long time. Bai Yang was very depressed today. It was Saturday, and he went to the company to deal with some things in the morning. He brought 2 documents back and also went to Tsinghua University's family courtyard to discuss with Associate Professor Jiao. When he arrived, he realized that he didn't bring his phone. He guessed that he had left it in the company office. He remembered Associate Professor Jiao's phone number, but he couldn't get through to the guard. The guard said that many people in the courtyard were watching the junior high school sports competition today. Bai Yang looked at the time. Anyway, it wasn't long before lunchtime, so he just stood there and waited. Ever since he helped his girlfriend raise a cat, Bai Yang had become much closer to cats. Sometimes, he would stop and play with cats when he saw them on the road. Maybe it was easier for cat owners to get close to cats than other people. Bai Yang had played with cats a few times, and it felt good. Today, when he walked into the eastern courtyard and stood under the tree, he saw a cat walk out from the flower bed. It didn't look like the cats that were often seen in the eastern courtyard. Bai Yang pulled a piece of grass to tease it, but when the cat approached, it suddenly raised its head. Then, as if it had seen something horrible, it turned around and ran away. Bai Yang heard the movement and turned his head to look at the tree. A blue parrot stood there, looking at him with its yellow eyes. Although the cat was gone, Bai Yang was very curious to see such a rare parrot. He looked around and didn't see anyone, so he didn't know where its owner was. Many parrots could say, "hello," or "goodbye," and so on. Bai Yang was interested and said, "hello," to the parrot in the tree. The parrot in the tree tilted its head and looked at Bai Yang. 2 seconds later, it said, "hello." Bai Yang was interested. He had seen people talking to birds in the flower and bird market before, and it was really interesting. "Hello," Bai Yang said again. "Hello," the bird in the tree said again. "What's your name?" Bai Yang asked. In fact, he just asked casually. He didn't expect the parrot to understand or answer him. However, to his surprise, the bird in the tree really replied. "What's your name?" The same question came from the mouth of the blue parrot in the tree. Bai Yang was stunned and then smiled. This was a parrot repeating the same words. My name is Bai Yang, Bai Yang replied. Then he waited with interest for the parrot to answer the same question. Unfortunately, Bai Yang was destined to be wrong this time. The blue parrot in the tree tilted its head and then shook its wings. If Sheng Tan was here, he would know what this stupid bird wanted to do at this time. The next moment, a small white poplar growing beside the outpost, deep roots, strong trunk, guarding the northern border, Bai Yang. What's going on? At first, Bai Yang thought it was a novelty. After all, he had not seen many birds that could sing. Moreover, this bird's singing was quite standard. Its words and tone were very outstanding. However, once it started singing, it could not stop. It sang over and over again. The first time Bai Yang felt strange, the second time he felt, haha, and the third time Bai Yang felt noisy. Can you please stop singing? Bai Yang sighed. But the parrot in the tree only stopped for a second, and then it continued to sing. Bai Yang rubbed his forehead and walked to the side. Then he took out a cigarette and lighter, ready to smoke. Just as he lit the cigarette, Bai Yang noticed that the parrot in the tree stopped singing. He took a puff and looked at it. When he was about to say something, he noticed that the parrot in the tree tilted its head and looked at him. Bai Yang suddenly had a bad premonition. Sure enough. Light up a cigarette. My heart is like a smoke ring, Bai Yang. This tune. Is it from the 80s or 90s? Zheng Tan sat in the Jiaopa's small electric scooter, and when he entered the courtyard, he saw Bai Yang with a cigarette between his fingers, but he didn't smoke. He stood there looking like he wanted to poop. And the parrot in the tree was singing, "Fill up a glass of wine, your face is as delicate as an apple." Bai Yang's face was really red, but it was definitely because he was angry. When he saw the Jiaopa coming over on the electric scooter, Bai Yang recovered from his stupor. Teacher Jiao, this bird is... Bai Yang pointed at the bird that had stopped singing and asked. A teacher downstairs raised it. It is quite smart and likes to sing. Chapter 124. When the Jiaopa brought Bai Yang upstairs, Zheng Tan squatted downstairs and waited. He didn't want to climb up and down. As for the noisy bird in the tree, it couldn't sing without an audience. It stood on the tree and looked at Zheng Tan, who jumped up the tree and laid down. Its gaze lingered on Zheng Tan's cat ears for a while. After being glared at by Zheng Tan, it hummed and flew to other parts of the courtyard to find an audience. It originally wanted to bully the cat from before, but it didn't expect to meet Bai Yang, an audience. Compared to bullying other cats, it was more inclined to sing. Only when it couldn't sing would it look for someone to bully or hide in a corner to watch the show. Zheng Tan knew this bird's personality, so before it left, Zheng Tan wouldn't let his guard down. If he wasn't careful, this bird would bite his cat ears. So, when General flew away, Zheng Tan was officially relieved. He yawned. Although he hadn't eaten dinner, he didn't feel too hungry. He had eaten some peanuts when he was at the Jiao Wei's restaurant. He guessed that the Jiaopa and Bai Yang would talk for a while, so Zheng Tan could take a nap. However, Zheng Tan didn't take a nap for more than a few minutes before he heard a car horn. The sound was quite familiar. He opened his eyes and looked in that direction. He saw the third Master Fang's car slowly approaching. The car window was down, and the third Master Fang stuck his head out of the car and looked at the surrounding tall trees. Finally, his gaze fell on Zheng Tan. He immediately smiled and waved at Zheng Tan. The driver today wasn't the third Master Fang, but another person Zheng Tan had never seen before. He looked quite steady, and the driver's face was expressionless. Zheng Tan got up and stretched. He shook his fur, jumped down the tree, and came to the side of the car. Third Master Fang didn't seem to be getting out of the car. He was still holding a phone in his other hand. When he saw Zheng Tan coming over, he motioned for Zheng Tan to enter the car to talk. Although he was confused, Zheng Tan still jumped into the car and stood in the back seat. Then he looked at Third Master Fang with confusion. Zheng Tan felt that the third Master Fang was not here to take him out to play. If there were any arrangements, the third Master Fang would have informed him long ago. However, Zheng Tan had not heard of any arrangements for the third Master Fang during this period of time. It was usually Celestine who came to take him out to play. Fang Xiaokong, who was sitting in the back seat, looked at the black cat in front of him carefully. "Yo, your beard is growing well. It looks much better than before." You don't have to worry about people seeing you like this. As he spoke, Fang Xiaokong took out his phone and flipped through the photos he had taken before. He nodded as if to confirm. Then, before Zheng Tan could flip open the phone, he threw the phone into his pocket and said, I passed by Tsinghua University today, so I came to take a look and introduce some people. I have to leave soon, so I won't go upstairs. Before he came, Fang Xiaokong had called Associate Professor Jiao. Otherwise, he would not have known that Zheng Tan was staying on the tree downstairs. He had already told Associate Professor Jiao about the details, so he only said a few words to Zheng Tan. Jiao Pa, who was staying at home on the 5th floor, looked downstairs from the balcony of his house. He went into the house to continue talking with Bai Yang. Just now, he plugged his phone into the power supply. Not long after he turned it on, the third master Fang called. He said that there was an event next Saturday, and he wanted to take his cat out for a walk. When the Jiao Pa was talking to the third master Fang on the phone, Bai Yang also heard some things. He also learned some things during his time in the company, including the pure black, lucky cat ornament in the office of Big Boss Yuan Zi. The Mr. Fang that Associate Professor Jiao called out just now was the one from Shaoguang Group, right? TSK, I really didn't expect that the call was about taking his cat out to play. Since when did all the social work fall on the cat? The cat business was busier than the human business. Downstairs, in the car, the third master Fang simply told Zheng Tan that he would take him out to play next Saturday and meet some new friends. He would send a driver to pick him up. After all, the third master Fang definitely did not have time. The driver that the third master Fang had entrusted with this important task was the person sitting in the driver's seat at the moment. This is Tong Qing. You can get to know him first. He will come to pick you up next Saturday. He is a good person and has a strong mentality. He can drive and fight, but he is a bit boring. Fang Xiaokong pointed to the person in the driver's seat as he spoke to Zheng Tan. Then, he asked the driver to take a good look at Zheng Tan. There were so many black mongrel cats in the world. It was easy for people who were not familiar with them to mistake them, but they also knew that once they were familiar with them, they would not be mistaken again. Throughout the whole process, the driver named Tong Qing's expression did not change much, but there was still a little doubt in his eyes. Perhaps he did not understand why his boss had to say so much to a cat. It was just a cat. Could it understand? Tong Qing had followed Fang Xiaokong from Beijing after the 11th of this year. He used to drive for Fang Xiaokong in Beijing for half a year. Fang Xiaokong felt that this person was good and steady enough. He should be able to withstand the psychological impact of Zheng Tan, so he transferred him over. After all, not everyone could accept such an evil cat, calmly accept it, and keep their mouth shut. Zheng Tan did not care. He was not worried about Fang Xiaokong's choice. Anyway, as long as the cat was not like Ran Qi, it was fine. He was too weak and could not be scared easily. After a few simple words and getting to know the person, Zheng Tan jumped out of the car and watched Fang Xiaokong's car leave the compound. He climbed up a tree and lay there for a while, waiting for the Jiao Pa to come down before they went out to eat together. In the following week, Jiao Ma knew that Zheng Tan had been invited by the third master Fang to play. She ran to Xiaoguo's place several times, thinking about how to make her cat look more high-end and classy. After all, in terms of breed and pedigree, those famous cats were several countries ahead of Zheng Tan. For people like the third master Fang, their cats must be famous cats. Famous pets were matched with famous people, and there were not many people who were as close to the people as the third master Fang. Of course, Jiao Ma definitely did not dislike Zheng Tan's rural pedigree. She was afraid that Zheng Tan would be laughed at by others. Maybe people would not say anything because of the third master Fang, but when she thought about how her cat would be ridiculed by a group of people, she felt uncomfortable. Therefore, she spent the past week thinking about how to make her cat look better. Unfortunately, Zheng Tan was not interested in Jiao Ma's thoughts at all. He was not long-haired. Even if he went to Xiaoguo's place for pet grooming, he would not change anything. She also avoided things like mandarin jackets and bow ties. She felt uncomfortable wearing those things. She already had a natural fur coat on her, so why would she still need a mandarin jacket? Jiao Pa was much calmer. Although he did not understand Fang Xiaokong's thoughts, he believed that Fang Xiaokong would not let anything happen to his cat. Zheng Tan also felt that there was nothing to worry about. They were just going to have fun. Was there a need to be so nervous? It was not the first time he had been taken out to have fun. While Jiaoma was thinking about how to make Zheng Tan look better, Zhao Lu was sitting on the other side of Fang Xiaokong's desk in his office. She had received an invitation for Saturday a long time ago. Her father did not have time as he was out of town, so she would go on behalf of her father. 2 days ago, when she met Associate Professor Jiao at Tsinghua University, she found out that the Jiao family's black cat was also invited. She did not understand. Zhao Lu roughly knew who would be going. Among them, there were a few who liked pets and liked to take them with them wherever they went. However, those were all famous pets. Why would they bring the black charcoal with the countryside bloodline to the event? Although Zhao Lu felt that this was not a good idea, her thoughts were similar to Jiaoma's. However, based on her understanding of Fang Xiaokong, she knew that his methods were sometimes extreme or messy. To put it bluntly, he was just messing around. However, the results were always surprising. Fang Xiaokong was a legend in the industry. This guy's thinking always took a turn in the direction of the unthinkable when others did not expect it. After holding it in for 2 days, Zhao Lu could not hold it in anymore. She ran over to ask her third uncle what he was thinking. Fang Xiaokong finished reading the report in his hand and slowly closed the folder. Then he looked at Zhao Lu and said, "When I was chatting with your dad last month, he mentioned an interesting story. In order to increase the survival rate of sardines, which are tranquil and prone to suffocation, a carnivorous and ferocious fish, such as a catfish, would be added to the sardines during transportation. The famous catfish effect." Zhao Lu knew about this. It was a common method used in management. Fang Xiaokong did not elaborate on the catfish effect. Instead, he asked, "Don't you think that these gatherings are too rigid? It's always the same group of people. They look so friendly and formal. It's too boring." Was it boring? Not really. At least, Zhao Lu felt that these gatherings were quite successful. They supported each other, strengthened the network of relationships, created some opportunities for cooperation, and so on. Moreover, weren't gatherings of this nature usually like this? Or, to put it bluntly, did third Uncle Fang feel that these gatherings were not chaotic enough? "That's why I feel that your dad's story makes a lot of sense," Fang Xiaokong said with a smile as he moved the roly-poly toy with a cat print on the table. "Zhao Lu, that's not how you interpret it. That's definitely not what my dad meant." Zhao Lu emphasized again. What a joke. If something really went wrong and his father was to be blamed for it, wouldn't that be terrible? Actually, when Zhao Zhang told the story of the catfish effect, it was just a metaphor for Fang Xiaokong. He felt that Fang Xiaokong was the biggest catfish in the industry. Fang Xiaokong's new, strange, and unique views, actions, and habits had already invisibly stimulated the industry. Just like what old Master Zhao said, the third son of the Fang family was, to put it nicely, a genius. To put it bluntly, he was a freak. The same thing, the same story, but from a different perspective, the way to discover and solve the problem would be very different. Looking at the roly-poly toy on the table, Fang Xiaokong raised his arm and rubbed his neck. He then mentioned a few names of the people who were invited. Finally, he lamented, "The ups and downs of the world, talking and chatting. It's so boring." "Third uncle, there will be trouble," Zhao Lu said seriously. Thinking about the people who were invited, she felt a headache coming on. It was worse than what she had imagined. She hoped that it wouldn't be too chaotic when the time came. This wasn't just a problem with the Jiao family's black charcoal. Even without black charcoal, there wouldn't be peace. It won't. I have confidence in it. As for the topic of discussion between Third Master Fang and Zhao Lu, Zheng Tan, it lasted until Saturday under Jiao Ma's daily nagging. After breakfast and a short rest, Tong Qing, the driver entrusted by Fang Xiaokong with an important task, arrived on time. Zheng Tan still didn't wear the jacket and bow tie that Jiao Ma brought back. The cat tag was also placed in Depang's house. He jumped into the car through the open window, found a comfortable position in the back seat, and was then driven away. Just like what Fang Xiaokong said when introducing Tong Qing, the driver was mentally strong, but he was a little boring. He didn't talk while driving, and he didn't even play music. At most, he listened to the traffic radio. Even if he was curious about Zheng Tan, he put all his energy into driving. He drove steadily and conscientiously, unlike Celestine, who always had endless topics to talk about. The destination of this trip was a little far from Tsinghua University. It was a garden villa area developed by Shaoguang Group. In order to celebrate the completion of the first phase of the project, Fang Xiaokang invited some people over for a party. The person in charge of security and reception outside recognized Tong Qing and the car. He glanced inside and didn't see anyone in the car. He felt strange. His boss's car had arrived a long time ago. Why did Tong Qing drive here? But he didn't think too much about it. They had other tasks and couldn't take care of Tong Qing. After parking the car, Tong Qing didn't open the window. Instead, he got out of the car and opened the door for Zheng Tan. Zheng Tan was a little excited. He didn't expect to be treated like this after becoming a cat. When he went out to play with Celestine, he basically jumped out of the car window. But after getting out of the car, Zheng Tan's excitement disappeared. There were some people standing around where the car was parked. Those people were observing every car that drove over, and then excitedly looked at the people who were rarely seen coming out of the car. Even if they were pets, they were rare pets. For example, the leopard cat that got out of the car before. That cat was not only eye-catching, but the cat tag on its neck was also studded with diamonds. But in comparison, the pair in front of them, driver, an ordinary driver. Cat, a field cat, commonly known as a mongrel. And they didn't have any decorations to show their identity, not even a dazzling cat tag. Naked. They felt that their class had suddenly fallen into a mess. In their eyes, Zheng Tan could be described in a more elegant way. He was outside, but not wearing an inch of clothing. The meaning expressed in their eyes was, what the F***ck, there's actually a shameless person over there. Those people felt that seeing such a cat in this kind of place was simply lowering their status. This kind of house cat that could be seen everywhere usually wandered outside, but coming to this kind of place was simply a disgrace to the owner. But even if they despised it, they didn't say anything rashly. Before they figured it out, even if they had their own opinions, they could still suppress it. Maybe some famous people like to raise this kind of cat. In fact, Zheng Tan was also puzzled. Did evaluating a cat's value require things like a cat tag, a collar, and those special little clothes? Did wearing a cat suit and a bow tie mean that the cat was quite gentlemanly? Did wearing armor comparable to that of a golden saint show that it was mighty and majestic? F***ck your paws. I'm just like this, going into battle with light, pure natural, 100% original goods. Zheng Tan turned his head and lifted his feet to walk forward. Chapter 125. Zheng Tan did not want to pay attention to those senseless people, but it was impossible to say that he did not care at all. However, this was not the place to cause trouble. The occasion was not right. Many of the people who came today were well-known figures in Tsinghua City. It was not that Zheng Tan was afraid of them, but it was mainly because with his current status, it was better for him to suppress his emotions. Otherwise, not only would he cause trouble for the third Master Fang, but his Jiao family would also not have an easy time. Forget it. I'll just have to ask the third Master Fang for something to compensate me for this little bit of depression. Zheng Tan was not the kind of person who would not take advantage of the situation. As he thought about it, Zheng Tan walked forward. After a few steps, another luxury car drove over. It was long and imposing, and there were a few other cars following behind it. The people around no longer paid attention to Zheng Tan. They were all looking in that direction. Zheng Tan only glanced over curiously and saw an old acquaintance get out of the car. He did not expect Yi Hao to come here. After Yi Hao got out of the car, he did not leave immediately. Instead, he helped an old man out of the car. The old man had white hair and was wearing a tang suit. He held a walking stick and looked to be in good spirits. Zheng Tan felt that the old man did not need a walking stick to walk steadily. Zheng Tan moved his ears and heard some people whispering around him. There was some excitement in their words. Master Tang the Seventh? After looking at the old man again, Zheng Tan thought of the Monsing. That guy seemed to be riding on this old man's coattails. Not bad. This coattail could make the Monsignor feel more at ease. Even if Yi Hao was not very willing at first, as long as the old man agreed, Yi Hao could not do anything about it. Just as he thought of Monsignor, Zheng Tan saw the guy get out of the car. There was a cat tag hanging around his neck. He didn't know what it was made of, but he guessed that it wasn't just an ID tag, just like the access card that Zheng Tan usually wore. It might have some other function. However, even if the Monsignor didn't wear any cat tags or other decorations, its appearance alone would give it a lot of points. At least the people standing around it wouldn't look at it as if it were an inferior product. Monsignor also looked very cocky. He raised his head, puffed out his chest, and walked like a cat. F***CK, that's Master Tang the Seventh, right? He was a big shot back in the day. What animal is that beside Master Tang the Seventh? A cat? Where did Master Tang the Seventh get this wild beast? I don't think I've seen this before. The one who came before also brought a big cat, but it was slightly smaller than this one. Hiss, why do I feel that this cat's gaze makes me panic? Me too. Is this the so-called murderous aura? No wonder it's Master Tang the Seventh's cat. It doesn't have the delicate feeling of those pet cats. It's so F***ing cool. Zheng Tan listened to the discussions of those people. He pulled his ears, turned around, and continued walking. Monsignor saw Zheng Tan when he walked out. He wagged his tail a few times, then looked at Master Tang the Seventh and Yi Hao. He still stayed at the side obediently. Whose cat is that? Master Tang the Seventh turned his head and asked Yi Hao. He also looked at the black cat. He couldn't be blamed for being curious. It was strange to see a cat with a bodyguard on such an occasion. Although many people thought that Tong Qing was just an ordinary driver, Master Tang the Seventh was an experienced man. He had sharp eyes. He couldn't see a cat, but he could see people. Yi Hao had a strange expression on his face. He moved closer to Master Tang the Seventh's ear and whispered a few words. Master Tang the Seventh's eyes flashed. He looked at the black cat that was walking steadily without looking back. So it's that cat. Just as he was about to call out to the black cat, Master Tang the Seventh heard someone call his name. He looked and saw that it was an old friend. He temporarily put aside Zheng Tan and started talking with another person who had just arrived. He walked slowly and walked further and further away from the black cat. Zheng Tan and Tong Qing were brought to their destination by the person in charge of leading the way. They glanced around. The greenery here was very good. There were long tables on the lawn with all kinds of food. There were mainly a few children and some young people here. As for the important people, they were probably talking indoors. It was just as Fang Xiaokong had said. There were many same species here. There were cats and dogs, and they were all rare breeds. For example, the leopard cat with the diamond-studded cat tag was specially served, and the Himalayan cat in the arms of the sexy mature woman. In comparison, Zheng Tan felt that he was really a country bumpkin. In addition to the cats, there were also some famous dogs. A few large dogs were brought by people. They were some distance away from here, but they kept eyeing this side. They were probably trained, so they didn't bark all the time. However, it looked like they would come over and bite the cats here if they had the chance. There was a puppy running around here. Although it was still young, it was already very big. It was at least bigger than Zheng Tan. It was just like the Saint Bernard that had just arrived at the eastern courtyard. It would definitely be big in the future. Unlike the Saint Bernard, this little guy was not docile. A big cat was lying on a chair next to it, teasing it. The little guy could not jump up. It could only growl twice and bite the chair leg. Zheng Tan looked at the big cat lying on the chair. Its pattern was quite similar to a leopard. However, its big ears were different from leopard and leopard cats. It was more like the serval cats on TV. However, was it okay to raise a serval cat in a big city in this country? Or was it a hybrid between serval cats and other cats? The latter was more likely. The big cat had a leather collar on its body. The leash was different from that of ordinary domestic cats. It was quite similar to the leash used to walk dogs. While Zheng Tan was walking downstairs, Fang Xiaokong was chatting with a few people in the villa not far away. Zhao Lu was also there. However, in terms of seniority, she was the younger generation. Most of the time, she just listened and did not take the initiative to speak. These people gathered together and did not talk about any business secrets. The most they talked about was their pets. Old Lu, I heard that you got a Tai Bao Jin some time ago. I saw that you brought a red mastiff here today, the third Master Fong said to one of them. Tai Bao Jin's cub was given away. I found myself a big red lion mastiff. Old Luing said, but it's still too young, so it's not that impressive. I heard that a lot of people use green dragon dogs to fool people. Old Lu, you have to pay more attention, a man in his 40s said. Hey, am I the kind of person who can be fooled? Old Lu glared. Right, Wang Bin, what kind of dog does your second uncle have? Fang Xiaokong turned to ask a young man in his 20s. It is a Xianxia dog. My father's comrade gave it to him as a gift. It was not convenient to raise it, so he gave it to my second uncle. Now, my second uncle brings the dog with him when he is training the soldiers, the young man named Wang Bin replied with a smile. Oh, there are people raising Xianxia dogs over there now. Old Lu smiled and did not comment. I have seen a few photos. The dog is always dirty. Does your second uncle let it roll around in the wild with his soldiers every day? Fang Xiaokong recalled the photos and asked doubtfully. Wang Bin shook his head. My second uncle said that he raised it for guard and hunting. It is normal for it to be dirty. It proves that it has been working hard and not slacking off. Not all dogs in Xiaxia can hunt. Even if their parents are excellent hunting dogs, it's rare to have two puppies that are good enough to hunt. Old Lu sighed. He had also raised dogs in the past, but it ended in disappointment. Hey, why do you keep talking about dogs? Talk about cats. A fat middle-aged man who had been sitting on the side smoking put out the cigarette but in the ashtray and said, Men still prefer dogs. What is so good about raising cats? They are squeamish, bad-tempered, and not loyal enough. Old Lu snorted. Big cats are good. I once went on a business trip. There was a dog-fighting ring where people bet on dogs. I was lucky that day and saw a good show. A ferocious cat killed a pit bull. How was it? Surprised? What's the use of saying this? No matter how powerful that big cat is, can you raise it openly or what? Old Lu attacked him. Although it was definitely possible to raise it with some means, it was better not to go too far. It was better to be low-key when it was necessary. That's why I took a step back. Come, let me show you. The fat middle-aged man called them to the balcony and pointed to the big cat that was lying on the chair leisurely playing with the dog at the long table below. He said proudly, How is it? Beautiful, right? Majestic, right? Old Lu, look at your puppy. It is not as majestic as a lion-head mastiff. Old Lu's face was not very good. He snorted again. You want to try it when my lion-head mastiff grows up? My cat is not stupid. It is flexible enough. Dogs can't jump high and can't climb trees. The fat middle-aged man's voice was a little light. Obviously, he was very proud now. He and Old Lu had some conflicts because of the previous projects, so he would not let go of the opportunity to attack him. Old Lu's face darkened, but he suddenly thought of something and said, Your cat is indeed bigger than a normal cat, but let me put it this way. In terms of combat power, in our Chuhua city, your cat can only be ranked third at most. Third. The fat middle-aged man's tone was not very good. Obviously, he was not satisfied with the third place. Although his cat was not as good as the big cats in the dogfighting ring, in Chuhua city, among the pet cats, it should be at least second if not first, right? Third. I have seen Nye 19's big cat. Your cat is certainly not as good as Nye 19's, but I also heard that Nye 19's big cat was defeated by Master Tang the Seven's cat. Although I have not seen Master Tang the Seven's big cat, in terms of first place, Master Tang the Seven's cat is definitely first, and Nye 19's cat is second. As for your cat, Fang Xiaokong stood next to them and lit a cigarette. He listened to their conversation with a smile on his face. After seeing the situation below, he stopped smoking for a moment, but then returned to normal. He ignored Xiaolu, who was looking at him from the side. Xiaolu was just going to look at the so-called big cat, but the first thing she saw was the black cat that was wandering around casually. Before she could smile, she saw the big cat that was lying there playing with the dog jump on the long table, staring in the direction of the black cat, and quietly approaching it. Zhao Li's heart suddenly tightened. She wanted to ask Fang Xiaokong to come forward and stop it. After all, In this place, her voice was definitely not as effective as Fang Xiaokong's. The fat middle-aged man, who was about to argue with old Lu, also stopped talking. He saw that his big cat was preparing to hunt. He knew his big cat too well. He knew what it wanted to do with one move. At this moment, its behavior was obviously to teach its prey a lesson that was ruthless enough. As for the prey that it had set its eyes on, even if it did not die or become disabled, it was inevitable that its muscles and bones would bleed and lose some meat. Just wait and see. I will open your eyes. The fat middle-aged man's voice was filled with uncontrollable excitement. He had been looking for an opportunity to let his big cat show off its power for a long time, but he did not expect one to come to him now. As for the black cat, it did not look special. He did not know which idiot raised it. Even if it was bitten to death, it would not be a big deal. Some people below were also waiting to see a good show. A few people looked in the direction of their boss. Seeing that the boss did not have any special instructions, they just let them be. Tong Qing had already noticed the abnormality of the people around him. He slightly turned his head and saw the big cat quietly approaching on the long table. He frowned and looked at the black cat in front of him, wondering if he should remind it. But this was the first time he had encountered such a situation. It was fine if it was a person, but when it came to a cat, he could not make a decision. He was not sure if this was the way cats dealt with other cats, or if it was a threatening attack. Forget it. Let's see the situation first. If it really is a threatening attack, then I can help. After Tong Qing thought about it, he paid attention to the big cat and the black cat in front of him. When the big cat was approaching quickly, the people around it did not hear it at all. It jumped over the dishes dragged to the edge of the table by the children and dodged a ping-pong ball thrown by a child. It was sometimes fast and sometimes slow. Every time it paused, it paid attention to the situation of its prey, ready to hide or pounce at any time. Standing on the balcony, the fat middle-aged man had a confident smile on his face. He believed that the big cat with the serval's bloodline had inherited the serval's ambush ability and high hunting success rate. Coupled with his intentional training, it would be a piece of cake for him to deal with such a small domestic cat. In the expectation of many people, the big cat finally moved. It jumped down from the long table and pounced on Zheng Tan, who was not far from the long table. At first, Zheng Tan did not notice the big cat. He was looking at the surrounding scenery. However, he soon sensed that something was wrong and twitched his ears. The big cat's footsteps were very light, and it was difficult to distinguish between the people talking and the barking of dogs, but Zheng Tan could hear the discussion around him and knew that he was being watched. What the F***CK? Before Zheng Tan could turn around, the big cat had already pounced on him. Zheng Tan's reaction was also fast. Now that his senses were much sharper, he had a strong premonition of danger. Perhaps other people would only see a big cat preparing to ambush an ordinary house cat. It was normal for cats to fight, and it would be over after a bit of noise. It wasn't a big deal. But Zheng Tan could feel the danger. The other party obviously did not intend to play the so-called friendly game between cats, but a real ambush. It was an ambush with killing power. Zheng Tan dodged and jumped away. As he jumped, he slapped the big cat. Zheng Tan was a little depressed, and he felt the malice from the big cat. He did not use much strength and slapped it with his paw. Bang, bang, bang. The big cat had just jumped down from the long table when it was slapped again. It knocked over many bowls, plates, and cups on the table. Fang Xiaokong, who was standing on the balcony of the villa and looking over, blew out a smoke ring and said slowly, "Oh, fourth place."